My mother called me crying, begging for money because their power was about to be shut off. So I immediately wired her $3,500 to keep them from sitting in the dark. Exactly a week later, I discovered my sister was using that exact money to sip cocktails in a Miami cabana. But that wasn't even the worst part. She had secretly taken out an $18,000 loan against our family home, so I froze the trust, sold the house out from under her, and watched her entire life collapse in real time. Let me start by saying that I never wanted to be the one holding the purse strings in my family. I'm Maya, I'm 32 years old, and for the last 7 years, I've been living in Seattle, Washington. I work in the tech industry, specifically in corporate strategy for a mid-sized cloud computing firm that recently hit a massive growth spurt. It took me years of grueling work, sleepless nights, missed holidays, and endless stress to get where I am today. I grew up just outside of Austin, Texas, in a family where money was always incredibly tight, and financial stress was the main dish at the dinner table. Our house was small, the roof always seemed to be leaking, and the anxiety about bills hung in the air like a thick, suffocating fog. I was the classic, invisible middle child. My older brother, Ethan, 35, was the sensitive one who always struggled to hold down a job, constantly bouncing from one failed venture to the next. My younger sister, Chloe, 28, was the undisputed golden child. She was beautiful, charismatic, and could do absolutely no wrong in my mother's eyes. She never had chores, never had curfews, and never heard the word no. When my dad passed away unexpectedly from a massive stroke 6 years ago, our whole world completely shattered. The funeral was an absolute nightmare. My mom, Martha, completely fell apart, unable to even pick out a casket or look at the floral arrangements. Ethan retreated into his own deep depression, locking himself in his bedroom for days on end. And Chloe just disappeared to hang out with her friends, avoiding the grief entirely. Claiming she couldn't deal with the negative energy, because someone had to do it, I stepped up. I was 26 at the time, barely scraping by in my first real corporate job, flying back and forth between Seattle and Austin every other weekend to handle court signatures, probate meetings, and endless legal garbage. I did it quietly. They all let me do it. And in the end, because no one else wanted the responsibility, I was named the sole trustee of the family trust, which included the deed to our childhood home and a modest bank account left by my dad. I didn't ask for that power. I just didn't say no because I was utterly exhausted. That decision, made in a haze of grief and fatigue, gave me a kind of absolute control none of them even remembered existed. Fast forward to last month. I finally landed a massive promotion at work. Director of Strategy. It came with a substantial 6-figure salary, serious stock options, and for the first time in my entire life, absolute financial security. I made the naive mistake of telling my family too early. I sent a message in our family group chat. The response was intoxicating. Fire emojis. Heart emojis. A gif of someone popping champagne. My mom said she always knew I'd make it. Chloe called me a boss. Ethan said he was proud of me. I actually smiled at my phone. I screenshotted the thread and saved it. It felt so incredibly good. Like finally, after years of being the quiet, overlooked, hyper-responsible middle child, someone was actually proud of my achievement. That warm, fuzzy feeling lasted exactly 10 days before the bleeding began. The request started small, testing the waters. First, it was Chloe. She texted me saying she needed $250 for 2 new tires because she was driving on wires and was terrified to commute to her part-time job. I sent the money without a second thought. A few days later, my mom asked if I could help with a $150 copay at the dentist because her tooth was throbbing. I sent it. Then it was $100 for groceries. Then $75 for gas. I honestly didn't mind helping at first. I told myself this is exactly what success was for, to help the people who raised you, to lift up your family when they were struggling. But then came the text that changed everything. It was 8:13 p.m., on a rainy Tuesday. I was sitting on my couch in Seattle, watching the rain lash against the window, exhausted from back-to-back strategy meetings, when my phone buzzed violently. It was from my mom. Please help, Maya. The power bill is past due. We're sitting in the dark right now. I hate to ask this of you, but can you send anything? I'm so sorry. The wording of it hit me like a physical punch to the gut. The sheer urgency. The deep shame. I immediately called her. She picked up on the first ring, almost like she'd been sitting there staring at the screen waiting for me. Her voice was trembling, thick with tears. She told me the electricity had already been shut off once earlier that day, that they were currently using cheap candles in the living room just to see, that Chloe had sold a silver bracelet just to buy bread and milk, and that her cell phone service was going to be cut next. I asked why Ethan couldn't help. She sighed heavily and said he was out of work again and struggling to pay his own rent across town. She sounded so small, so fragile, so tired. I felt a massive wave of guilt for sitting in my expensive, temperature-controlled apartment while my mother sat shivering in the dark in Texas. I told her I would take care of it immediately. I didn't just pay the bill. I logged into my banking app and wired $3,500 directly to the trust's linked bank account that night. I told her to use it to get ahead on the electricity for the next 6 months, buy a month's worth of premium groceries, fill up their gas tanks, and give herself some much-needed breathing room. I wanted her to feel secure. I slept so easily that night. I felt like a hero protecting her family. The next morning, she called me, crying tears of absolute joy, saying I had saved them and that she was so deeply ashamed they had let things get that bad. Exactly 1 week later, my entire reality flipped upside down in a sushi restaurant. I was having lunch with my cousin, Marcus, in downtown Bellevue. Marcus works in commercial real estate and isn't super close with the Austin side of the family, but he and I have always stayed in touch. We were eating lunch, talking about his new dog in the real estate market, when he casually pulled out his phone. "Hey, did you see Chloe's latest Instagram story?" he asked, taking a sip of his water. I shook my head. "No, I don't really check Instagram during the workday." "Why?" He frowned, tapped the screen a few times, and handed his phone across the table. I stared at the glowing screen for a very long time. My heart started to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. It was a video of Chloe lounging poolside in a private, luxurious cabana. The location tag was glaringly obvious. Miami, Florida. I recognized the background immediately. It was a high-end boutique hotel I had actually looked at staying at for a tech conference a year ago but deemed way too expensive. On the small glass table next to her lounge chair were two vibrant, overpriced tropical cocktails with tiny umbrellas. She was wearing a giant sun hat, designer sunglasses, and her nails were freshly manicured in a bright pink polish. The caption written across the video in bold letters read, "Only real family invited." Miami vibes. There was no mom sitting in the dark. There was no desperate cry for help. There was no Ethan struggling to pay rent. It was just Chloe, two of her sorority friends, and my other cousin Julian, who lived near Miami. Marcus raised his eyebrows at me, clearly sensing the sudden, dangerous tension radiating off me, but he didn't say anything. I handed the phone back to him. I was completely silent, and then, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was that cold, terrifying kind of smile you give when the puzzle pieces finally click into place, and the picture staring back at you is a horrifying, undeniable betrayal. I realized in that exact second that I had been played for an absolute fool. Update 1. I didn't call Chloe that night. I didn't text my mother to demand answers or scream at her. I didn't throw anything against the wall. When I got back to my apartment, I locked the deadbolt, made a strong pot of black coffee, and opened my laptop. I pulled up a highly encrypted folder on my hard drive that I hadn't touched in nearly 3 years. It contained all the legal documents for my father's estate and the family trust. While the city of Seattle slept outside my window, I went digging. I needed absolute, undeniable proof before I detonated my family. First, I called the Austin Power Company. I put on my best, sweetest customer service voice and pretended I was just double-checking on a payment for my mother, Martha, because she was elderly and forgetful. I gave them the account number and the address. The representative clicked her keyboard a few times and cheerfully told me, "Oh, you're all good. The account is completely current." In fact, it was paid in full 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, the $3,500 I sent had never touched the electric bill. There were no candles. There was no shut-off notice. The entire scenario was a fabricated theatrical production. I didn't flinch. I politely thanked the woman, hung up the phone, and immediately logged into the trust-linked bank account. Because I was the legal trustee, I had full administrative access, even though I usually let my mom manage the day-to-day debit card usage for household expenses. I pulled up the activity log for the past 7 days. My stomach dropped to the floor. There it was. Withdrawals at a gas station in Louisiana. ATM pulls in downtown Miami. A massive charge for a boutique hotel under Chloe's name. Expensive seafood restaurants. Late-night Uber rides. It wasn't just a white lie to cover a mistake. It was a highly coordinated, premeditated scam. My mother had actively participated in a theatrical phone call to extract thousands of dollars from me so her golden child could go on a luxury vacation and live like a celebrity on my dime. I didn't stop there. I was in a completely detached, surgical headspace. I logged into the county clerk's online database to check the property tax status of the Austin house, just to ensure they hadn't neglected that, too. That's when I found something that made the blood freeze entirely in my vein. There was a notification of a lien filed on the family home. The house that was still legally owned by the trust. The house I was legally responsible for maintaining. I paid the $5 processing fee to download the scanned document. I stared at the PDF for almost 5 full minutes, blinking hard, convinced my eyes were playing tricks on me or the screen was glitching. But it was there in stark black and white. An $18,000 loan borrowed against the house. filed by a predatory payday loan company located in a run-down strip mall near downtown Austin. These types of lenders are notorious for targeting the elderly and estates, often turning a blind eye to proper documentation if they think they can trap someone in a high-interest cycle. And the signature on the borrower line? Chloe. The house wasn't in Chloe's name. She wasn't on the trust. She wasn't listed as an owner anywhere on the deed. She had zero legal standing to use that property for anything, let alone as collateral for an $18,000 loan with an astronomical interest rate that compounded monthly. But she had done it anyway, likely forging my mother's signature on supplementary documents or exploiting a loophole with a careless, commission-hungry loan officer. It had been filed 2 months earlier, long before the fake power bill crisis ever happened. So, while I was wiring money across the country thinking I was saving them from freezing in the dark, Chloe was sitting on $18,000 in cash that legally tied a massive debt to the house my mother lived in. I called my lawyer in Austin the very next morning at 8 a.m. sharp. I didn't wait for office hours to fully begin. I sent the PDFs over with a single subject line, "Call me immediately." Frode. When he reviewed the documents, his voice was deadpan over the phone. He confirmed my worst fears but also handed me my greatest weapon. Chloe had committed blatant mortgage fraud. She had absolutely no claim to the property. If the loan defaulted, the predatory lender could attempt to force a sale of the house, rendering my mother completely homeless. I felt something incredibly dark and heavy settle in my chest. It wasn't rage. It was profound, hollow disappointment. They hadn't just lied to me for vacation money. They had gambled with the only asset our father left behind, the only safety net our family had. I gave the lawyer the green light to execute every legal option available. I formally locked down the trust. I froze all bank accounts linked to it immediately. I canceled all the debit cards. I filed a temporary hold on all future distributions due to suspected financial fraud. Then, I had my lawyer draft a brutal cease and desist letter to the loan company, providing documentation that the collateral was fraudulently offered and threatening them with severe litigation. Finally, I had a formal legal notice sent to Chloe via certified mail, requiring a signature upon delivery. I didn't warn them. I just sat back in my office chair and let the bomb drop. By noon the next day, the fallout began to rain down. Ethan called me first. I answered. He sounded completely panicked. "Maya, Mom's card just declined at the grocery store, and the bank is saying the account is completely frozen. She's freaking out in the checkout line." "What's going on?" I kept my voice terrifyingly calm, completely devoid of emotion. "Is the power still on at the house, Ethan?" He paused, clearly confused by the question. Yeah? Why wouldn't it be?" "No reason," I said, and hung up the phone. 2 hours later, Chloe finally texted me. There was no mention of her lie, no apology for Miami, no explanation for the fraud. Just a quick, wildly entitled message: "Hey, can you unfreeze the account or send a few hundred until Friday? Mom's card isn't working, and she's blaming me for some reason." I typed a single word and hit send. No, she tried to call. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. She called again. I let it ring. I let them sit in the suffocating silence of their own making. But the universe wasn't done handing me ammunition. While my phone was blowing up with missed calls, I got a Venmo notification on my home screen. It was from my cousin Julian, $450, lightning bolt emoji. I texted him immediately. "Hey Julian, did you mean to send me this money?" He replied less than a minute later. "Yeah. That's your cut from the Miami trip. Chloe charged us $450 each for the luxury Airbnb. She said she booked it early and fronted the cash, so we all paid her back today. Figured since it was your money she used, you should get my share back. Sorry about all the drama." I stopped breathing for a second. I logged onto Airbnb and found the exact listing based on her Instagram photos. It was a luxury penthouse cabana right on the beach. $2,250 for 5 nights, booked under Chloe's name, paid for with a trust debit card. She hadn't just stolen my money to go on a lavish vacation. She had turned around and charged her friends and our cousin rent for a place she didn't even pay for. She profited off my stolen money. She was running a scam within a scam, essentially operating a fraudulent travel agency with my bank account. The next morning, the certified letter hit Chloe's mailbox. The county clerk's office also flagged the fraudulent lien and initiated a massive property audit. Because the property was now under active investigation for severe financial fraud, the county informed my mother she had to temporarily vacate the premises until the legal ownership and debt liability were definitively sorted out. My mother, who had lived in that house for 30 years, had to pack a single suitcase and move into a tiny spare bedroom at a lady's house from her church. My mom called me that evening, sobbing hysterically. Not angry, just completely defeated and broken. "Maya, I didn't know." She wept into the receiver. "I knew she wanted money for a trip, and I lied about the power bill, but I didn't know about the loan. I swear to you, I didn't know she put the house up as collateral. I'm so incredibly sorry. Can it be fixed?" She asked quietly, sounding like a frightened child. It can, I told her, my voice unwavering. But not by me. Not this time. That night, I received a handwritten letter from Chloe. She had paid to overnight it to my apartment in Seattle. It was pure, unadulterated venom. She accused me of humiliating her, of making her look like a criminal in front of the family, and claimed I was a malicious control freak who was punishing her for a simple misunderstanding. The last line read, "You changed after Dad died. You became cold and heartless. This is who you are now. I hope your tech money keeps you warm at night, because you have no family left." I folded the letter neatly, put it in my desk drawer, and went to sleep. I slept a full, uninterrupted 8 hours. Update 2. 3 days later, the reality of the situation completely broke my mother. I was in a quarterly budget meeting when my phone vibrated with 3 consecutive emergency calls from Ethan. I stepped out into the hallway and answered. Ethan was sobbing. It was a guttural, terrifying sound that I had never heard him make before. "Maya, it's Mom." She collapsed. "She's in the ICU right now. They don't know what's wrong yet. She was at the church lady's house and just dropped face first in the kitchen. Please come. Please." My heart stopped beating. I ran to my manager's office, told him it was a severe family emergency, and booked the first available flight to Austin. The 6-hour journey was a blur of pure, agonizing anxiety. When I arrived at the hospital at 2:00 a.m., the sterile smell of bleach and rubbing alcohol hit me like a physical wall. The ICU was eerily quiet, save for the rhythmic, terrifying beeping of heart monitors echoing down the cold linoleum hallway. Ethan was pacing the waiting room, wrapped in a thin, scratchy hospital blanket, his eyes red and horribly swollen. We hugged for the first time in nearly a decade. The doctors confirmed it was a severe stress-induced cardiac arrest. She had absolutely no history of heart issues, but the sheer terror of losing her home, the deep shame of the fraud investigation, and realizing what her golden child had truly done pushed her aging body past its physical breaking point. She had literally worried herself to death's door. Chloe showed up the next morning. She walked into the ICU wearing oversized designer sunglasses, a messy bun, and an expensive hoodie. She looked right through me. She didn't say a single word. She just stood by the hospital bed, looking down at her phone, occasionally sighing as if being there was a massive inconvenience. Over the next few days, Ethan and I practically lived in the hospital. We slept on uncomfortable vinyl chairs and drank terrible, lukewarm vending machine coffee. Mom slowly stabilized. She finally woke up, fragile, pale, and utterly exhausted. Then came the crushing financial reality. Despite her basic Medicare coverage, the emergency transport, the extended ICU stay, and the endless battery of tests racked up a massive out-of-pocket bill. The hospital financial counselor handed me a printed estimate. $28,000. It had to be paid or put on a crippling, high-interest payment plan within 30 days, or it would go straight to collections. Ethan looked at the paper and put his head in his hands, weeping silently. Chloe stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed, staring blankly at the wall. Nobody said it out loud, but the silence in the room was deafening. They all knew I was the only one who had the resources to fix it. I looked directly at Chloe. She rolled her eyes, scoffed loudly, and crossed her arms tighter. "I don't have it. I spend it. Stop being such a bitch about it. You make more than all of us combined. Just pay it." I turned to Ethan, completely ignoring her existence. "I will cover this," I said firmly, my voice echoing in the small room. "But this is the absolute end. After this, the games are permanently over." I wired the $28,000 payment to the hospital billing department 2 days later. It stung my savings account significantly, but I had the liquidity to absorb the blow. When Mom was finally strong enough to talk coherently, I sat by her bed. She looked up at the ceiling tiles, tears leaking continuously from the corners of her eyes. "Did you save us again, Maya?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machines. I held her frail hand. "Yes, Mom. I took care of it." She squeezed my fingers weakly. "I don't want to go back to that house, Maya. I can't look at those walls anymore. The memories are completely ruined." She didn't have to explain it to me. That house was no longer a home. It was a towering monument to manipulation, guilt, and devastating betrayal. "You don't have to," I told her softly. "I have a plan." While she was recovering in the step-down unit, I executed my final, irreversible plan. I signed a 1-year lease on a beautiful, ground-floor, 2-bedroom condo on the quiet, upscale side of Austin. It was fully furnished, had massive bay windows that let in the warm morning light, and was completely removed from the toxic memories of our past life. When I finally brought her there upon her official hospital discharge, she walked in, sat on the plush velvet sofa, and let out a long, shaky breath it seemed she had been holding for 6 years. "It's so peaceful here," she cried quietly. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "Dissolve the trust immediately. List the house on the market. Today? No delays." Because I was the sole legal trustee, And the property was legally unencumbered once we definitively proved Chloe's lien was entirely fraudulent. I had the absolute, unquestionable authority to liquidate the asset. Ethan agreed immediately. He told me he was entirely sick of the drama and just wanted a clean slate to start over. Chloe, however, went absolutely nuclear. She blew up my phone with dozens of erratic, furious texts. "You can't do this. You're selling our family legacy. You're a tyrant. Dad would be absolutely disgusted with you." When I ignored her, she hired a sleazy, billboard advertising lawyer to file an emergency legal injunction, claiming I was abusing my fiduciary duty as trustee to maliciously punish her. She demanded that the court halt the sale and insisted she was entitled to a full third of the house's total value, regardless of the $18,000 lien she had illegally secured. The intense legal battle lasted exactly 4 days. My lawyer, a seasoned, ruthless estate litigator who had zero patience for nonsense, presented her attorney with an ironclad binder of evidence. We showed the forged signature on the payday loan documents, the bank statements tracking the trust funds straight to the Miami ATM, the Venmo receipts proving she charged her friends rent for the stolen Airbnb, and a drafted, ready-to-file police report for felony mortgage fraud. Her lawyer dropped her as a client by Friday afternoon, terrified of being implicated in a fraud case. I put the house on the market the following Monday. In the current, highly competitive Austin real estate boom, it sold in just 14 days for $45,000 over the initial asking price. The payout distribution was clean, precise, and utterly brutal. I took my legal third. Ethan received his full legal third. For Chloe's portion, I legally deducted the $3,500 she stole for the Miami trip, the $28,000 hospital bill she directly caused, the exorbitant legal fees I incurred fighting her fraudulent lien, and the administrative cost of clearing the title. Her expected six-figure inheritance was reduced to a pathetic, microscopic fraction of what it should have been. I mailed her the final cashier's check without a single accompanying note. She never said a word, she never called to complain, but she cashed it the very next day. That singular action told me everything I ever needed to know about my sister's true character. It has been a little over a year since the house sold. The profound silence in my life is the most beautiful, comforting sound I have ever heard. Chloe completely vanished. Ethan told me she moved to Arizona with some random guy she met on Facebook Marketplace while trying to buy a used couch. She packed up her car in the middle of the night and left the state without even calling Mom to say goodbye. There was no explosive argument, no tearful farewell. Just an empty, hollow space where her endless entitlement used to be. Ethan has actually turned his entire life around. He got a stable, well-paying job working for a large HVAC company and was recently promoted to a regional supervisor. He calls me every few weeks, not to ask for money or complain, but just to talk. We laugh about stupid things we did as kids, like the time Dad accidentally set off fireworks inside the garage. We never mention the trust, the money, or Chloe. As for Mom, she is thriving in a way I never thought was humanly possible. The new condo complex has a massive, highly active senior community center. She started taking water aerobics, joined a weekly painting class, and is now the elected president of a local book club. I flew down to visit her last month, and she proudly showed me a watercolor painting she had done of our old house. It was painted in soft, muted grays and blues, with no people standing in the windows. She told me that painting it helped her finally let the past go. She never asked how much the house sold for. She never asked what happened to Chloe's money. She just wanted peace, and I finally bought it for her. I still live in Seattle. I'm still the director of strategy, but the job doesn't consume my entire identity anymore. I no longer work 8-hour weeks just to outrun my family's dark shadow. My apartment is filled with thriving potted plants, vibrant new art on the walls, and a profound, quiet sense of safety that I had never experienced before. I've started dating a wonderful man named David, who is kind, patient, and actually listens when I speak. We spend our weekends hiking the gorgeous trails in the Pacific Northwest, completely disconnected from the chaos of my past. I recently found an old, dusty box of my dad's things in the back of my closet. Tucked inside a worn paperback book was a piece of paper with his messy handwriting. It said, "Don't wait for people to do the right thing. Just do your part, and let the rest burn." I stared at that note for hours. For my entire life, I had been waiting for my family to act correctly. To appreciate me. To be honest, but people will always show you exactly who they are, and it is not your job to fix their brokenness at the expense of your own sanity. I didn't destroy my sister's life out of revenge. I did it out of absolute, unwavering necessity. You can love your family without letting them use you as a human ATM. You can help people without letting them drag you to the bottom of the ocean. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is lock the door, sell the house, and walk away forever. I found out my child is my brother's. I decided to divorce. My parents begged me to stay silent because my father-in-law invests in their company. I, 28M, have been married for 3 years, and my wife Jade, 26F, and I have been together for 6 years. We had our first child a few months ago, but I only recently discovered that the baby is my brother's biological child. My brother Grant, 32 million, had been having an affair with Jade for the previous 3 years. It began just a few weeks after our wedding, and I had no idea until a few weeks ago. To be honest, I had been having trouble connecting emotionally with the infant for some reason. I had been feeling like a bad father because I didn't feel very attached to my own child. I still don't understand why that was happening. Maybe it was just a gut feeling. One night, I was discussing this with Jade, and I burst into tears because I felt so guilty. Instead of soothing me, she began sobbing uncontrollably. That's when the full truth came out. She agreed that it wasn't my fault that I didn't feel connected to the baby wasn't mine. She had already received the paternity test results but chose not to inform me. She said the affair ended shortly after she discovered she was pregnant and that she and Grant had no contact with each other anymore. She wanted to focus on me and our marriage. But once she told me the truth, it was too late. I started packing right away and went, despite the fact that it was late at night. Since then, I have been staying at a hotel. Jade attempted to stop me. She was quite furious, but I just left. I even blocked her, so she couldn't reach me. Since then, this has drained a lot of my emotional energy. For the first few days, I couldn't process what was going on. I did not even inform my parents about it. But they found out, thanks to Jade and Grant. Instead of comforting me, they called, said they knew everything, and then began telling me that whatever had happened was in the past. They claimed that Jade had made a mistake, but as her husband, I had to forgive her, put everything else aside, and focus on our family and our marriage. I had no concept what they meant by family, because the infant was not mine. It was ludicrous of them to advise that I raise the baby as a father and stay with Jade despite everything. I believed they were insane, but my dad eventually told me the reality. Apparently, this was merely a commercial transaction for my parents. My father-in-law intended to invest in my father's failing logistics business in order to restore it. My father-in-law runs numerous established enterprises and is financially secure. I knew my parents were always impressed with the family I married into, but I never imagined it would mean so much to them. Apparently, this investment has been in the works for quite some time, and they intended to surprise us with it in a few weeks once everything was finalized. However, divorcing Jade would have a negative impact on their personal ties. They were concerned that my father-in-law would reconsider investing in the firm. According to my parents, my father sorely needed this money to keep his firm running. That's why they wanted me to suck it up, remain silent, and not make a big fuss about it. They wanted me to pretend everything was fine, raise my brother's child as if it were my own, and forgive my unfaithful wife, all in order to complete their commercial agreement. I was so horrified, I hung up and blocked them. Then, just for good measure, I started looking for a lawyer right away. As soon as I met someone suitable, I filed for divorce. Jade was served approximately 3 days ago. On the same day, I decided to contact my parents, in-laws, every business acquaintance of my father that I knew, a couple of employees in my father's firm, a few family friends, and some cousins to inform them of my current predicament. It took me a few hours to get everyone's email addresses, but once I did, I notified them all about my wife cheating on me with my brother. I also confessed that my parents had encouraged me to remain silent and pretend everything was normal so that they might acquire an investment. Then I sent an email. Now, my folks are inundating my phone with emails, SMS, and phone calls from numerous numbers and accounts. They are really furious about what I have done since, of course, they will no longer receive that investment. On top of that, they have lost their reputation. They want me to apologize, as if that will resolve everything. They also inform me that Jade is distraught and has been diagnosed with postpartum depression, suggesting that my actions will only make matters worse. She is really miserable, and they are attempting to make me feel bad. But, honestly, I don't feel awful about anything. I think they earned it. So, am I the asshole for exposing the truth about my wife and parents, embarrassing them in public? Edit. Okay, I see there are a lot of questions concerning Grant, his relationship with Jade and me, and other things. So I will address that. Grant and I had a fairly normal connection, as most brothers do. The entire event was totally unexpected. We haven't spoken once since finding out. Grant had an apparently typical connection with Jade. I never suspected there was anything going on between them. Furthermore, Grant had always been a loner who had no interest in sticking with one woman for an extended period of time. His job forced him to travel frequently, and aside from that, he was spontaneous and always on the go, completely unlike me. From what I understood, he was never Jade's type, either in appearance or demeanor. So, obviously, none of this made sense to me. Jade informed me that they just started hooking up after we got married, And it ended when she discovered she was pregnant. She might be saying the truth or not. But, even then, I saw nothing strange. They were just very excellent at concealing it. Whatever it was, I always assumed they were only friendly with each other. I'm not exactly sure why Jade cheated on me. When she was attempting to persuade me to stay and justifying herself, she mentioned how I overworked at the beginning of our marriage. I had just started working because I did not want to continue my father's business. I knew I needed to work hard if I wanted to advance. Sure, some may say I was serious about my profession, but I never overworked or carried my work home with me. I believe she was just bored and wanted an excuse to meet up with someone else, which is exactly what she did. Any other reason she provides is only an attempt to rationalize her behavior because she does not want to recognize that this was totally her fault. That is pretty much all I know about Grant and his relationship with Jade. Update 1. Thank you all for your comments and support. It means a lot to me, especially given my current situation. Everyone hates me, whether it's my parents or my in-laws, because they believe I embarrassed them by informing so many people about what Jade did, including those who didn't need to know. It's been a few days, and I've spent every second either drowning in work at the office or returning to the hotel and deleting the innumerable texts and emails my parents continue to send me from various accounts. They are absolutely relentless. They're simply not going to quit. I try blocking them, but they keep creating new accounts and numbers. I'm not even sure why they're going to such extremes. The damage is already done. My apologies will not change the reality, nor will they become more respectable. My in-laws reached out to me a few days ago. They explained that my email was entirely unnecessary. They discovered who else I had emailed it to and accused me of sending it to a group of individuals my parents knew solely to disgrace them. However, they alleged that because I did so, Jade was also humiliated. I don't understand why I should feel awful about that. That woman literally cheated on me with my brother and was content to let me believe the baby was mine, enabling me to raise my brother's child as my own, until she broke down that night. She did something disgusting. She completely earned this. I didn't bother responding to my in-laws since I really just want to move on from this. I'm currently waiting for Jade's lawyer to react to the divorce filing. In my opinion, I've been quite fair, and I just hope she doesn't complain about anything. As for the baby, it isn't mine, so I won't be donating anything. I might be the father mentioned on the birth certificate, but that makes no difference to me. I don't detest the baby or anything. In fact, the baby is the only fully innocent individual in the whole affair. I honestly feel horrible for him because he will pay the price for his parents' misdeeds. Even still, it is not my job to care for a child who is not biologically mine, especially if the real father is my brother. If Jade brings up anything regarding the kid, I already know I'm not going to accept responsibility. I'm basically ready for every potential circumstance because I have no idea what to expect right now. I haven't spoken to Jade since I left, and I don't want to ever speak to her again. I know she is unhappy right now, enough people have told me so. Even as I was leaving, I could tell she was really sad. I just hope her pain doesn't lead her to believe she can dispute the divorce and convince me to stay, because that will never happen. At all costs. I will do whatever it takes to get out of this circumstance. In the meantime, I'm hoping she doesn't drag this out and make things much more difficult than they currently are. Please keep me in your prayers, and I hope she does not oppose the divorce and make matters worse for everyone concerned. She still has a few days to respond, so I'm praying she makes the correct decision. Update 2. Hello everyone, it's been a week since my last update, and today I finally received a response from Jade and her lawyer. Fortunately, she is not opposing the divorce. But now there's another issue. She has provided a child custody agreement, insisting that I step forward as the biological father. She even wrote a statement stating that because I am included on the birth certificate, even though I am not the biological father, I have been involved in the baby's life for the past few months and must accept responsibility, whether I like it or not. It was infuriating. The name on the birth certificate is meaningless in comparison to the paternity test findings. So I immediately contacted my lawyer, and we decided to proceed with disestablishing paternity. That way, I can be legally released from all obligations for the infant. Until the legal process is completed, I will be presumed to be the legal father. But the infant is just 4 months old, so I don't believe it will matter too much. I'm still optimistic that the procedure will be done shortly. My lawyer promised me that the process would not be difficult. Given the baby's age, my absence is unlikely to have any effect on him. He'll most likely forget that I ever existed in his life. It would have been a much bigger problem if I had discovered it later, when he was older. But for now, everything should be good. To be honest, I'm pleased I found out when I did. If this had occurred later, I'm not sure how difficult it would have been to deal with, especially emotionally. I might have developed a bond to the baby, making things even more confusing. I am also relieved that I was unable to bond with the baby at first. I had read about it online and discovered that many new parents face similar challenges, so I hoped that with time, I would bond with the baby like a normal father. But now I thank God that didn't happen. The remorse I felt for not connecting with him prompted me to confess it to Jade, revealing the truth. If I had bonded with the infant, I might not have found out. That is the only silver lining in this whole mess. Another source of relief is that, in recent days, my parents have finally decided to back off, at least temporarily. I'm not sure what their future plans are, but happily, they haven't texted or bothered me. It has just been radio silence. Now that I've had some time to evaluate my future, I'm thinking about moving out of the hotel and into an apartment near my workplace. At the moment, all I want to do is work and sleep. Of course, I can't remain at a hotel indefinitely, it'll get too expensive. So I approached a few acquaintances to put me in touch with a realtor. I'll see where it goes. I've also started responding to everyone who answered my email. Surprisingly, quite a few people expressed sympathy and compassion for me. I'm not sure if their worry was real, but I decided the nice thing to do was answer. Now that I think about it, they must have felt odd receiving such an email. The very least I could do was acknowledge them. Almost 90% of the folks in my family who received the email expressed sympathy and confidence that everything will be all right. The majority of the employees ignored the email, but a handful of my father's business associates responded in like. I thanked everyone, including a few folks I hadn't originally contacted. I'm guessing they got out from other sources, as I'm sure this spread like wildfire as family gossip. But as long as people reach out to express their sympathy, I'm fine with it. At the very least, they are not attempting to obtain additional information. It may appear needy, but right now, I'm quite content to receive whatever lovely words come my way, whether they're true or not, from friends or relatives. Because, no matter how unhappy I am, I still miss her. I miss being with her. I miss my parents and family. I miss when everything was normal. Despite the fact that they betrayed my confidence, I believe it is quite reasonable for me to feel this way. It's not like I can turn a switch and stop caring. It will take me a long time to completely digest everything. But for the time being, I'm in a strange emotional limbo in which I'm unsure how to cope. I feel quite alone right now, but I suppose things will improve someday. I don't think I'll ever be able to totally accept it. Jade was the first woman I ever truly loved, but life won't stop for me. I still need to work. I still have to deal with all of the practical issues, and I have to keep going forward. It sucks. But that's the way it is. Update 3. Hello, everyone. I filed a petition to disestablish paternity about a week ago, and both parents were summoned before family court. Of course, Jade lost her head over it. She didn't know how else to contact me, so she created a phony Facebook account and began phoning me over Messenger. This happened yesterday while I was at a meeting, so I had my phone on quiet. I hadn't even noticed it at first. Later, when I checked, I discovered that she had contacted me approximately 12 times in 45 minutes. She had also sent me a slew of angry messages when I didn't answer. Apparently, she believes Grant and I have ruined her life. She told me that she did not break up with Grant after the pregnancy. Rather, he dumped her after discovering she was pregnant since he did not want anything serious. That's when she decided to continue with me, knowing that I was committed to her. But then she discovered that Grant was the father, so she tried to contact him again. This time, he simply informed her to end the pregnancy since he was not ready to be a father and had no intention of committing to her. She kept attempting to reach him, but he simply ignored her. He eventually blocked her totally. She told me everything in her messages. Now she accuses me of abandoning her, just as my brother did. And that, it appears, is how the two of us ruined her life, by leaving her alone with a baby. Grant has made it abundantly apparent that he is not interested in raising the child with her. Even if she gets him to pay child support, she won't be able to make him a true parent. And now, she claims, she and the baby will suffer. I cannot understand how any of this is my fault. I can see why she believes Grant ruined her life, despite the fact that she had an affair with him knowing exactly who he was and that he disliked being tied down. But how does she blame me? The mental gymnastics here are insane. After reading her communications, it became evident to me that she only wanted to play the victim. In any case, I didn't want to talk to her, so I blocked her. If she knows what is best for her, she will not argue the paternity issue and will allow me to disestablish fatherhood peacefully. This allows her to save time, money, and resources while focusing on getting Grant to step up and pay child support. She's pursuing the wrong brother, that's all I have to say about it. Anyway, the whole problem will be resolved in court, so I don't want to worry about it right now. In addition, I had my parents' support. But recently, I believe they have chosen to leave me alone. In my previous update, I noted that they hadn't troubled me in a few days. Since then, they have not texted me at all. This could be the quiet before the storm, or they may discover they have already lost their reputation and investment. Making me apologize won't solve anything for them. According to what I've heard from a few relatives, my parents have gone utterly missing. They have canceled all of their social media accounts, stopped communicating with family members, and, as far as I know, my father's business has been defunct for quite some time. People believe he is in the process of selling everything, which is why the company is closed. If that's the case, I know he'll be devastated. He was always quite proud of what he created. Ah well. My father is almost in his late 50s, so I hope he has enough savings to retire. I don't believe he can start again and work for someone else at this point in his life. I am not on good terms with him right now, but I know he used to work hard. Perhaps he messed up recently, but he had always tried to be a decent parent to me. So, I hope everything works out for him. That being said, I hope I don't have to speak with him for a while. I'm just not prepared for it yet. Even without me, they still have Grant. He makes a nice living, and I don't think it bothers them that he is rarely at home. He does not have a family, and I doubt he intends to establish one. So, if my parents don't have enough savings, they can always rely on Grant. He may become their retirement fund, and honestly, I hope Jade does the same thing. I hope she gets some child support from him. That'll be enjoyable. Fun for me, but not so much for him. But after everything he's done to ruin my marriage and the life I've created for myself, that's the least I can hope for him. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll post again if anything more happens. Please keep me in your prayers, and thank you all again for your love and support. Update 4. Hello guys, I haven't posted here in a while since I've been quite busy. I suppose my previous update was about 5 weeks ago. But, in the interim, I was able to officially end paternity. That means I will not be paying child support or accepting any responsibility. It was a major victory for me, especially since I assumed she would try her hardest to drag it out. Fortunately, she did not contest it. I believe she realized that opposing it would be a waste of time, money, and resources. Clearly, the family court judge was no fool. She had already refused to comply and provide the paternity test results, so I had to do them separately. But this was not going to influence the outcome. She could have kept it for as long as she wanted, even 10 years, but it would have made no difference because I was not the father. Anyway, I was able to verify that the infant was not my biological child. And because I had only been in his life for 4 months, the court determined that my absence would have little influence on him. That is how I obtained what I desired. Since then, I haven't spoken with Jade, and happily, she hasn't bothered me. My parents' firm has been sold, and they are preparing to relocate, according to a handful of cousins. They've only told a few individuals where they're going, those who have stuck by them during this whole ordeal. But really? It's not difficult for me to guess. I believe they are relocating to my uncle's home in Iowa so that my mother can join her brother in managing the farm they inherited from their parents. This was always her plan. She had offered it to my father several times over the years, but he had no desire to leave the city. They used to argue about it a lot. Now, he does not really have an option. So he has finally agreed. At the very least, my father will continue to be a member of a family business, albeit not the one he had hoped to lead indefinitely. But all of that is in the past. I've been trying to move on from what happened. I have been going to therapy. I have been going to the gym. I have been actively working on myself. I wouldn't claim I've fully recovered, that would be a lie, but I am in the process of moving on. Some days are excellent. Some days are especially difficult. But I am getting by. Update 5. It has been over 6 months since my previous update. A lot of time has passed, and I'm feeling considerably better. I was promoted at work, most likely as a result of all those months spent immersing myself in work to keep myself distracted. Certainly not a healthy coping strategy, but at least something positive came from it. Also, I'm officially divorced. It was finalized a few months ago, but I forgot to mention it here. Because there wasn't much to divide and she didn't want alimony, the process was rather simple. We simply had to wait for the necessary time period to pass before it could be finalized. So, yes. We're officially divorced now. I haven't seen her since then, but a few weeks ago, I learned from some common friends that she had moved back in with her parents. She's currently raising her son with them. Until lately, she had been living independently in the property we used to share, but I suppose she can no longer afford the rent without me. Perhaps she merely wanted extra assistance from her parents. Honestly, hearing this bit of gossip prompted me to post this update. I hadn't given it much thought because I've been so busy. But when our mutual friends informed me of her condition, I felt compelled to return here and share. As for Grant, I believe he is the only one who has come out of this disaster undamaged. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little jealous of him. According to what I've heard from relatives, he appears to be doing well. But at the end of the day, he remains a homewrecker. He is still a bad person. So, I believe karma will catch up with him someday. Meanwhile, I'm going to focus solely on myself. My husband was manipulated by his mother and demanded a paternity test for our child. I agreed, but my mother-in-law tampered with the results. I, 28F, have been with my spouse, Mark, 30M, name changed for privacy, for 6 years and married for the past 2. I'll start with some backstory. My mother-in-law has never been the nicest person to me, but I usually ignored it, especially in the start of our relationship. I was young and naive, and I imagined that mother-in-laws behaved similarly with their sons. When I was 16, I moved out of my family's house and haven't had much contact with them since. So I didn't have any perspective on what a healthy family looked like. I guess the events of the last few weeks have been building up for a while, and now I'm completely lost. I don't know what to do. For reference, when I first met my husband's parents, we were all out to dinner. His mother appeared kind enough at first, but throughout the dinner, she kept making comments that were targeted and underhanded. So, do you have a job of your own, or do you just live off Mark's money? Have you ever considered losing weight? You have such a pretty face. I think you would be stunning if you were a little slimmer. You're a great girl, but I just don't think I could ever find anyone good enough for my baby boy. I understand, I ignored every possible red flag. But, in my defense, I was deeply in love with this guy. She constantly said these things in a nice, humorous tone, and I didn't want to overreact. For the first several years of our relationship, she frequently made small, underhanded comments about my weight, appearance, or the idea that I was dating Mark for his money. The trouble is, we both work in the same field and earn nearly the same amount. While he earns slightly more than I do, it is far from enough to justify gold digging. At first, the things she said bothered me, so I took them up with Mark. He repeatedly told her to quit making comments like that. But, because it was never anything excessive, he dismissed them, stating that because he is her only kid, Mom is a little clingy. We also didn't see his parents very much because we were both busy at work and lived about an hour away. When he proposed to me, things quickly escalated. I won't go into too much detail, but my mother-in-law made our engagement and wedding difficult. When we invited his parents to supper to announce our engagement, his mother broke down when she saw the diamond. She asked Mark how much it cost and flushed bright red when he told her. I understand that it may appear to be a lot to others, but we both work in a lucrative industry and are financially blessed. The price was reasonable for him. Still, she informed him that I didn't deserve such a costly ring and that he had never purchased her anything that expensive, something she thought she deserved as his mother. She also stated that she did not believe he was serious about me after we had been dating for 3 years. Mark urged her not to be crazy and left it at that, but supper was destroyed, and everyone left shortly thereafter. His mother did not speak to him for 3 weeks after that. Later, she sent him an apology, stating she was afraid of losing her little man. During the wedding planning, my mother-in-law attempted to tamper with the guest list and vendors. And yes, she wore a white dress to my wedding. Mark supported me throughout this. We had passwords for all of the vendors, and he had his mom change them. Our first year of marriage was wonderful. We wanted to have a family and started trying for a baby right away. However, everything changed when I became pregnant at the end of last year. We surprised my in-laws at their house with a small gift basket including champagne, chocolate, and a tiny plaque that read Grandma. When they opened it and realized what was going on, my mother-in-law looked at me and said, "You sure it's my baby? Mark's, right?" I was astonished, but she smiled and behaved as if it were a joke, and the evening went on. That's when she started making a lot of comments about my weight. "You've really put on a few pounds, haven't you? Be careful, or your husband's eyes might start to wander." I stayed thin during my whole pregnancy with Mark. "You should really stop being so lazy and put effort into looking good for my baby, Mark." She also mentioned women she knew who had misidentified another man's child as their husband's. It always felt like she was after me. She even joked about how she wished I wouldn't do something like that, implying that I cheated. I despised these statements and constantly requested her not to make them. She would dismiss it, adding, "You take things too seriously, can't you take a joke?" Then she brought up Lauren, 30F, Mark's ex from high school. She would talk about Lauren's skinny and petite figure and how she matched Mark better because they were both athletic. These comments, along with pregnancy hormones, caused me to cry several times. At first, Mark would yell at his mother to stop talking to me in that manner, which only irritated her more. But about the 4th or 5th month, he became distant. He started visiting his mother more frequently without me and would come over on weekends, even when I begged him to remain because I was sick or in agony. Around my 5th month, he stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings before work, hugging or caressing me at home, and expressing no emotion at all. I was completely confused. But whenever I asked him what was wrong, he became irritated and told me I was acting clingy and annoying, or that he was just tired. He even indicated that I was acting crazy due to my pregnancy hormones. I let it go and tried to concentrate on myself and my kid, but I was sure my mother-in-law was bugging him about it. When my baby was born 1 month ago, my mother-in-law insisted on being present in the delivery room. I didn't want her there. But Mark claimed if I didn't allow her to come, he wouldn't be there for me either. At this point, I was so emotionally and physically weary that I caved in and let her stay. Although my labor was long and complicated, holding my kid was the sweetest moment of my life. I'd do it all again for him. Then, just after they cleaned him up and returned him to me, Mark went to me and said, "I want a paternity test." I was shocked. I assumed it was a prank at first. But he was serious. I was really perplexed and kept asking why. I'd never cheated on anyone or given him cause to believe I had. My job was remote, and he had to go into the office, so I was practically constantly at home. My pregnancy was very challenging, therefore I didn't have the opportunity or time to have an affair. He kept stressing that he wanted to be sure the baby was his and that he didn't want to pay for some other man's child. Hearing him say such things about our baby broke my heart. I consented to take the paternity test because I had nothing to conceal. 3 weeks ago, we received the results. As you might expect based on the headline, the results were negative. I thought there had to be a mistake, but Mark refused to even look at me. He packed his belongings and left for his mother's place, leaving me home alone with a 2-week-old newborn. I called repeatedly, but he didn't answer. I texted him, saying there had to be a mistake and suggesting another test, but he did not respond. He eventually called me 1 week ago. By this point, I was a wreck and all I needed was help with my baby. Instead of offering any comfort, he remarked, "My mother was correct. I can't believe I married a woman like you." That's when everything clicked. What did he mean when he said his mom was right? At that point, I was certain she had told him lies about me having an affair, being immoral, or something equally ridiculous. I decided to phone my mother-in-law yesterday because Mark no longer responded to my messages. When she answered, I told her I needed to speak with Mark and that he couldn't just abandon me with a 1-week-old kid after all of the issues I experienced throughout pregnancy and labor. She smiled and told me he wasn't home, and that I earned what I received. That was it. I was finished. I was done with the entire family by this time. I had my baby to think about, and I was not going to let them walk all over him like they had done to me. I was not going to put up with my mother-in-law's nonsense longer. I replied, "I don't know what you think of me, but I never cheated. The test was wrong." That was the turning point. She laughed again and informed me that she already knew. Then she acknowledged that she had submitted the incorrect sample to ensure that the results were negative, because, in her words, I did not deserve her kid, Mark. She refused to let me baby trap him. She went even further. He will never believe you or put some woman over his own mother, so just let it go. I was stunned. For a minute, I was unable to answer. Then she went on a big rant about how she always wanted Mark to be with someone good enough for him, someone who matched him in appearance. She mentioned Lauren again, stating how much she missed her and how Mark should recognize that she was the one he was meant to be with. The paternity test was simply a ploy to encourage him to leave me so she could find him a suitable companion. I hung up. Since then, I've been numb. I can't believe a real grown-up would act like this. That gets me to where I am now. I texted Mark right after and told him what she had said. I advised him to ask her himself. I'm not sure where to proceed from here. Should I have another paternity test? I'm thinking of hiring a lawyer, but I don't want to make things any more complicated. Should I even take him back if he decides he wants to return? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Update. One quick update for everyone who asked. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who responded and offered suggestions. I honestly didn't anticipate so many people to see this. I went to bed last night after finishing this post and awoke to 900 comments. I read them all, but I won't be able to respond to everyone, so I'll answer a few questions here. As I mentioned in my essay, I am not connected to my family and have not spoken to my parents in years. They did not attend my wedding, and I do not believe they are aware of or concerned about my baby. My family is from Minnesota, but I came to the East Coast after leaving my parents' house. I supported myself through school and college by working various jobs, met Mark in college, and have been working remotely since. I don't have many friends locally, and my family is out of the question. I'll call my coworker Katie, F., who lives close, and we occasionally text. I informed Katie a little about what was going on, and she was kind enough to offer to come over and support me. When she arrived at my place, I was a wreck. I hadn't showered in a week, the house was a mess, and my 2-week-old newborn was wailing in my arms. I burst into tears because I was so relieved to see her. Which was awkward because we weren't even close. But she was incredible. She inquired what was going on, and I couldn't even explain. So I just showed her the original post. Katie has been a sweetheart. She's been minding my son while I clean up, eat some proper food, and take my first hot shower in 2 weeks. She's also been a rock for me right now and is outraged on my behalf. To be honest, it feels great to finally have someone on my side. That's it for now. Several of you inquired about my father-in-law. I never mentioned him because he isn't very talkative. I'm not sure what he thinks of me, but he's always been kind to me and normally overlooks my mother-in-law. I'm also not sure why my mother-in-law dislikes me so much, but it's not because of ethnicity or religion, as some of you have stated. We are all white and not religious. I believe it's because I'm a bit of a big girl and rather tall, but Mark is really fit and enjoys working out at the gym. I'm not big or unhealthy, I exercise regularly, but I'm not as small as my mother-in-law or some of Mark's ex-partners. That is my best guess. Honestly. I'm also planning to contact a lawyer today. At this point, I don't think I'll ever look at Mark in the same way again. I know I want a divorce. I had already screenshotted as many chats as possible, both with my mother-in-law and with Mark, just in case this happened. I'll also acquire another paternity test and give him the results as I serve him with divorce papers. He hasn't responded to my texts yet, and at this point, I do not care. I don't want my son to have a father like him. I'm outraged that he didn't even talk to me before departing me and his son. I don't even want him around anymore. Update number 2. Hello everyone, it's been a pretty hectic couple of months, and I've had numerous comments and private messages requesting an update. So I figured I'd catch everyone up. It's been 2 months since my previous post. Mark returned home about 2 days after I posted my first update. By that point, I had cleaned myself in the house, thanks to Katie, and had contacted with a lawyer about divorce proceedings. Mark arrived early in the morning, looking utterly dreadful. Unshaven. His eyes appeared as if he'd been crying for 3 days. I was not expecting him. We stood there in quiet for a bit before he sobbed and apologized. I know I claimed I didn't want anything to do with him anymore, but seeing him stand in front of me was difficult. I'd loved this man for 6 years, and it was difficult to let go of everything. Hearing him apologize felt wonderful too. I allowed him in, and we sat in the living room while I held my baby. He kept crying. Eventually, he begged to hold his son. The wrath from the previous few days returned, and I said no. He simply nodded and let it go. After gathering his thoughts, he asked if we could talk. I consented because I wanted to know what he had to say. Thank you to a commenter here, I remembered to record the chat on my phone. The truth comes out. He didn't want to believe it when I texted him what his mother had told me, but it continued bothering him. Finally, he chose to confront her. Of course, she denied it, telling him that I was attempting to baby trap him for money and isolate him from his family. However, my father-in-law had had enough of his insane wife at that point, and he told Mark everything. It appears that one of my mother-in-law's nephews worked at the lab where the paternity test was sent. She persuaded him to switch the results. Mark stated that it felt as if his entire universe had fallen in that moment. Because he recognized what a lousy husband and father he had been up to this point. What a manipulative bitch his mother was. To be honest, hearing that made me feel amazing, but it was not the end. The scope of her manipulation. His mother then attempted to defend herself by claiming that I was too large and womanly for her ideal, handsome son. She wanted him to divorce me and reunite with his ex since, in her opinion, she was prettier and more suitable for him. She also despised the fact that he was paying me and our baby too much attention, because it was taking precious time away from her. Things become worse. When he came over to her place during my 4th month, one of the occasions I was unable to go, she invited his ex, Lauren. She convinced Mark that I had been aloof and irritated because I was having an affair and forcing him to raise another man's child. Lauren, who was petite and, admittedly, very attractive, flirted with him at every opportunity. And Mark acknowledged falling for his mother's deception. He began seeing Lauren behind my back. Because he enjoyed feeling wanted. As I struggled with my pregnancy, he was the one having the affair. He stated they never slept together, only dated and kissed and such. As if that makes things better. He claimed he called it off the week before I went into labor due to remorse. Then, after telling me everything, he pleaded for forgiveness. He stated that he will go to any length to resolve the situation. That if it came to it, he would remove his mother from our life for good. And for a brief while, it seemed tempting. I almost gave in. Then I glanced at my son. And I remembered everything he had put me through over the past year. How he never established boundaries with his mother. How he engaged in an affair. How he abandoned me when I was most vulnerable. I informed him that with everything that had happened during my pregnancy and after our son was born, it simply wasn't feasible. I no longer saw him the same way, and I had lost trust in him. He cried some more before agreeing to arrange a motel nearby. I also informed him I wanted to take a true paternity test again. He protested, but I insisted. So the test was scheduled for the very next day, the results and divorce. 2 weeks later, the results were returned. Wouldn't you know it? He's the father? Cue more crying from him. Is it awful that I felt vindicated? Last week, the divorce papers were finally drafted, and I served him. After 2 months of agony, he was a wreck and attempted to recommend couples counseling before making any major decisions. But I was really done with him. I requested a 50-50 asset distribution and primary custody, which my lawyer believes will be readily granted given the facts I have of Mark's behavior toward our baby. Mark will get supervised visits on weekends, and his mother will not be permitted around my child. Mark stated that he will not challenge me on the terms, out of guilt. And honestly, rightly so. Father-in-law steps in. My father-in-law contacted me the day Mark was served to apologize for not stepping in sooner. I forgive him. From what I've heard, he's always been a laid-back man, and Mark has also stated that he is likely to leave his wife. What about my mother-in-law? I don't know anything about her anymore. She's been blocked since the day Mark arrived at my door. Moving forward, I'll be moving out of our flat. While I am heartbroken and overwhelmed by how my marriage ended, I am also hopeful for the future. So that's what's been going on recently. I probably won't update for a bit. It's time to focus on myself and my son. I'd simply like to thank everyone who offered advice and support. I'm quite appreciative. I probably wouldn't have gotten this far without it. Update 3. Wow, I had forgotten about this account. It's been a year since my previous post. I deleted Reddit off my phone and sort of forgot about it. This will be a brief update for those who wish to know. Current situation. My divorce is set to be finalized next month. Mark abruptly decided that he no longer wanted to give me majority custody or supervised visits, so the proceedings took a while. But my attorney was a beast. With the tapes I have of his admission regarding his behavior throughout and after my pregnancy, I have a good chance of getting what I want. My baby is now 14 months old and the loveliest little boy. We moved across the state to a charming little apartment. Thanks to my job, I can spend most of my time with him. I've also begun going out more and joined a book club, so I've definitely met some new people here. The divorce, relocation, and attempting to raise my son on my own have all been difficult. But, really? I feel so much better without Mark and his witch of a mother ruining my life. I should have recognized the warning signs from the start, when this man repeatedly prioritized his mother before his own pregnant wife. But you live and learn. And I will not make that mistake again. What's next? I'm not sure if I'm ready for a relationship again. But, for the time being, all I want to do is be as present as possible with my son. I don't think I'll be updating again, but I'd like to add that I'm in a much better place than I was last year. And I thank everyone who has wished me well. After 15 years of dedication, I resigned, causing chaos in the company and financial trouble because my father favored my younger brother over me. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello Reddit, long-time lurker and first-time poster. I had to get this off my chest before I lost my sanity. If you don't want to read my son's tale, you can find the TLDR at the bottom. So, I'm a 34-year-old male who has been working for my father's plumbing firm, Taylor & Sons Plumbing, for 15 years. The son section is supposed to be about me and my younger brother Matt, 31M, but it's more like Taylor and his favorite son. And the other one who does all of the work. My father founded this company around 30 years ago, a classic small business story. We started with just him in a van and now have 15 plumbers, 3 office workers, and are one of the larger plumbing companies in our community. And I'm not being arrogant when I suggest that most of that growth occurred after I joined. After high school, I attended college to study business management for 4 years, earning an official degree. Meanwhile, my brother Matt barely graduated high school and required 6 years to complete a 2-year degree at a community college. While I was studying, he was uploading gym selfies and making his way around the local bar scene. After graduation, I returned home to work for my family's business. Dad emphasized the need of learning from the ground up, so I spent 3 years as a plumber's assistant, unclogging toilets, crawling beneath houses, and dealing with others' physical. Fine, whatever. I got it. Can't manage plumbers if you don't know what they do. I worked my way up, obtained my master plumber's license, which is a massive pain in the ass, BTW, and learned scheduling, inventory, and all of the boring but essential stuff that keeps a business running. I worked 60-hour weeks for years, missed my friends' weddings due to emergency calls, and did not date for around 5 years. Who has time? Then I finally made it. I became operations manager about 5 years ago. I began implementing all of the systems I had been planning. Digital scheduling, better inventory management, follow-up calls following jobs. Our reviews went from 3.5 to 4.8 stars. Revenue increased by 40% in 2 years. Dad genuinely appeared impressed for once. Then Matt shows up. Enter Matt. Until now, my brother had been bouncing between bartending and finding himself. Suddenly, he decides he wants to join the family business. Keep in mind that this guy has never exhibited any interest in plumbing. I can't tell the difference between PVC and copper pipe. I think a P-trap is something you use to catch animals. But Dad? Dad is absolutely thrilled. His golden boy has finally joined the family legacy, and this is where everything goes to hell. Dad offers Matt a made-up title like Director of Client Relations, and a salary that is 80% of mine, despite the fact that I've been there a decade longer. Matt is assigned an office with a window. Meanwhile, I am still in the converted closet adjacent to the restroom. What's his job? Taking clients to lunch. We're posting on our social media. Occasionally showing up at project sites to photograph our plumbers working, always making sure to include himself in the shot, as if he's overseeing. He arrives around 10 a.m., has 2-hour lunch breaks, and departs at 4 p.m., due to traffic. Every staff meeting, Dad compliments Matt on bringing in some minor contract while completely disregarding the fact that I recently optimized our whole billing system and saved us $50,000 per year. It's as if I'm invisible. There was one instance when I spent weeks putting together a bid for this massive commercial project, the largest contract we'd ever pursued. I'm talking about binder-thick proposals. I even pulled an all-nighter to finish it. On the day of the meeting, Dad brings Matt along. Matt had not read a single page of the proposal. Matt, who was hungover, kept racing to the bathroom. Matt, who described the client's building as that big place with the sign, throughout the meeting. We received the deal anyway since my figures were good. On the drive back, Dad couldn't stop gushing about Matt's connection with their team and how his people skills sealed the deal. My contribution? Dad commented that my attention to detail was beneficial. Helpful. As if I were the freaking office assistant. Moms know better when I try to talk to her about it. She gives me a sad expression and says things like, "You and your brother are just different kinds of people. Not everyone can be as organized as you are." As if competence were a character fault. The final straw. One day, I overheard Dad speaking with Matt in his office. The door wasn't completely closed. Dad was talking about succession planning. When you take over the company, and asked Matt if he wanted to learn about the finances. My name did not come up. Not even once, not even, maybe your brother can help you with the accounting, or something. The company I helped establish. The company I've dedicated my entire adult life to. And I am not even considered a prospective future owner. Just the workhorse who keeps things going while Matt takes the spotlight. Keeping my head down. I kept my head down and finished the work. It was not like I could do something about it. Then, around 9 months ago, our administrative assistant quit. She had been with us for 5 years but received a better offer elsewhere. Dad said we needed to hire someone with more office management experience because we were expanding. Enter Julie, 29 Fahrenheit. Something resonated with me the moment she walked through the door for her interview. She walked with confidence, her dark hair was always in a perfect bun, and her emerald eyes seemed to see right through all the bogus corporate BS. She wasn't one of Matt's typical Instagram model types, but she was stunning in a refined, put-together sense. Her resume? Impressive as hell. Business degree. Experience managing offices for firms far larger than ours. There are numerous accounting software and business operations certifications available. Dad was so thrilled that he hired her on the spot. Something he never does. Julie changes everything. How about her first week? She thoroughly restructured our filing system, which hadn't been updated since the 1990s. Is this her second week? She discovered $20,000 in unpaid invoices from the previous year and collected it. Is this her third week? She confronted my father about our antiquated scheduling system and persuaded him to invest in the software I had been yearning for years. I was essentially in love. We started having lunch together in the break room. We initially discussed only work-related topics. Then we realized we both enjoyed the same true crime podcasts. Then I discovered she enjoys hiking, which I do as well. Then there were movies, novels, and all that. It was so simple to chat to her, unlike those awful Tinder dates where you're trying to think of anything to say. Asking her out after a few months of the lunch thing, I finally got the nerve to ask her out. For real. Dinner on Friday night at that new Thai restaurant downtown. Not the break room, with our sad Tupperware meals. She agreed right away, smiling in a way that made me feel like I wasn't simply the family doormat. We scheduled it for the following Friday. I was ridiculously excited. I even caught myself whistling while fixing a sink on one job site, which completely confused the apprentice working with me. I did not inform anyone at work about our date arrangements. My family has a specific gift for spoiling anything nice that occurs to me, so I decided to remain silent until things got serious. A big mistake. The gut punch. 2 days before our date, I was returning from work when I heard Julie giggling in the hallway. That genuine chuckle was something I had worked hard for weeks to obtain. But she was not laughing at what I said. She was chuckling about something Matt said. As I approached the corner, I noticed them standing far too close together at the coffee machine. Matt was performing his famous lean against the wall, "Look how cool I am" posture. He was showing her something on his phone, and she was genuinely interested in whatever rubbish he was spewing. "Hey, Ryan," Matt said as he noticed me, using that false brotherly tone he saves for when other people are present. "Just showing Julie those kayaking pics from last weekend." Kayaking? Matthew. The guy who complains about having to walk from his automobile to a restaurant while it's raining. The guy who once asked me if the river near our house included those fish things. Since when does he frickin' kayak? Julie smiled at me, but it was not the same grin. It was simply polite, professional. The kind you give to a coworker, not the person you're about to go on a date with. My stomach sank. "They're amazing photos," Julie replied, returning her gaze to Matt. "I've always wanted to try kayaking but never had the chance." "You should come with me sometime," Matt added, flashing that idiotic smile that always works on ladies. "I go most weekends when the weather's good. Very peaceful out on the water." Let me tell you, this guy has never kayaked in his life. The closest he's been to a water sport is drinking beer on someone else's boat. But suddenly, Mr. Outdoorsy appeared. "That would be fantastic," Julie stated. And she really meant it. I could tell. She turned to face me. "Ryan, I didn't know your brother was so into outdoor activities." "Neither did I mumbled. But they were quickly back to scanning through his phone, which I'm sure featured stock shots of boats or images he found online. The next day, Julie found me alone in the break room. My heart skipped a beat as I wondered if the Matt encounter was all for nothing. "About Friday," she said. And I knew exactly what was coming. "I'm really sorry, but I need to reschedule. Something came up." Something came up is the worldwide code for "I found a better offer." And in this case? My brother undoubtedly made the superior deal. "No problem," I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "Maybe another time." "Definitely," she said. With a smile. A smile that did not reach her eyes. A smile that conveys, "This is never happening." Sure enough, I found out later through an office rumor that Julie and Matt had their first date on Friday, the same day she was supposed to go out with me. At the Thai restaurant where I had planned to take her. The next week was torture. Matt strutted around the office, as if he had won the lottery. Julie flushed every time he passed past her desk. When I entered the room, the whispered talks halted. Matt casually mentioned their date during the staff meeting. I felt like garbage. Every time I try to construct something for myself, Matt swoops in and takes over as if it was never mine in the first place. And of course, things got worse. Matt tells Mom everything, so she knew about it right away. She called over the weekend, all thrilled. "Have you met this Julie that Matthew is seeing? He says she's just wonderful, so accomplished and pretty. She works at your office." "She's our office manager," I replied bluntly. "Well, Isn't that nice? Matthew says she's very smart. Organized too. Sounds like she and Matthew have so much in common. They share nothing in common. Except for maybe living on the same planet. But sure, Mom. They are soulmates. Finally, I snapped. Actually, Mom, Julie and I were supposed to go out first. I asked her out, and she said yes. But then Matt swooped in. There was a prolonged pause. I could almost hear Mom trying to assimilate this information in a way that would not make her beloved Matthew appear terrible. Well, sweetie, you know how these things go. Sometimes people just connect. Matthew has always been so charming with the ladies. You're more, well, focused on work. Seriously. Not everyone appreciates that like they should. She basically said, Matt's hot and fun. You're boring. Deal with it. The new power couple. And that's how it began. Matt and Julie, Taylor and Sons Plumbing's new power couple. However, the saddest aspect was not even losing Julie. It was seeing her gradually comprehend who Matt truly was, and pretending not to notice it. The cracks begin to show. He canceled arrangements with her for the first time because his friends invited him to a last-minute poker game. The day she overheard him exaggerating, or outright lying, about his function in the company to a client. She once had to cover for him when he was due to attend a networking event but was too inebriated to show up. I could see the perplexity on her face. The mental gymnastics as she attempted to reconcile the Matt she thought she was dating with the real Matt. However, by that time, they had become official. And she was in too deep. My family circles the wagons. Mom invited Julie to Sunday supper 3 weeks after they began dating. It'll be nice to have a fresh face, she exclaimed. As if our monthly family dinners weren't already agonizing enough, especially since my work infatuation had picked my brother over me. I almost skipped dinner. But Dad made it clear that it was not optional. Family dinner is family dinner, Ryan. Be there. The dinner from hell, so I went. And it was just the nightmare you'd imagine. Mom went all out, using her best china and preparing a sumptuous roast. Dad told work stories that made Matt sound like a business prodigy. Matt performed his ideal son-boyfriend routine, pulling Julie's chair out, refilling her water glass, telling utterly fabricated stories about his wild weekends and charitable work. Julie ate it all up, laughing at Matt's jokes, questioning him about his fictitious hiking expeditions. While I sat there, knowing that Matt's closest experience with outdoor adventure is when he had to park at the far end of the mall parking lot, I attempted to join the conversation. I described the hiking trail Julie and I had discussed over our break room lunches, just to let him know what he ruined. Oh, Matt was just telling me about that place, Julie cried, turning to him with excitement. You've been there too? Been there, Matt asked, laughing. I practically live on that trail in the summer. Sure. He is suddenly Bear Grylls. The promotion I deserved at supper happened 6 months ago. They have been formally dating ever since. Anyway, I focused on myself and tried to adjust, praying that things would improve for me. I persuaded myself I didn't really care about what slipped through my fingers. I knew fantastic things would happen. About a month after that dinner, I was ultimately promoted to senior operations manager. After 15 years of killing myself for this company, this was meant to be a big deal. Increased responsibility, better pay. Most importantly, the company's car. Nothing fancy, just a new Ford F-250 with ample towing capacity for transporting equipment to job sites. The announcement that almost was worth it. Dad made a major announcement during our monthly staff meeting. After years of dedicated service, Ryan is being promoted to senior operations manager. This comes with a nice raise and the new company truck we just purchased. Well deserved, son. For once, I felt as if my effort was being recognized. I even allowed myself to get enthusiastic about having a great vehicle for the first time in my life. Instead of my rusted-out Chevy, which is held together with duct tape and prayers. And then came Sunday dinner. Fast forward to Sunday dinner. Mom's preparing her renowned pot roast. Dad's talking about a client. Matt has his arm around Julie, as usual. I'm just hoping to get through the lunch without saying anything I'll regret. Then Dad clears his throat and sets down his fork. I've got an announcement to make, says the man. I immediately tighten up. Because in my family, announcements are never good news. Matt and Julie share this glance, and I know what's next. The bombshell: we're engaged, Julie announces, holding out her left hand. With this huge diamond ring, which likely cost more than my annual income. Mom breaks into joyous tears. Dad begins clapping Matt on the back. I'm sitting there in shock. The fork had frozen halfway to my mouth. This is wonderful news, Dad exclaims. My boy's finally settling down, starting a family. Then he drops the actual bomb. The ultimate betrayal. Matt, I think you and your future bride could use that new truck more than the company could. Consider it an engagement present. You'll need a good family vehicle now. Matt makes a phony astonished face, as if this hadn't been his goal all along. Wow, Dad, that's so generous. I've finally discovered my voice. Dad, that truck is supposed to be part of my promotion package. I need it for work. For actual company business. Dad waved his hand dismissively. Now, Ryan, don't be selfish. Your brother's starting a family. Family comes first. You can keep using your old truck for now. It still runs, doesn't it? Barely, I said. But no one was listening. They were all busy praising the happy couple, discussing wedding plans and future grandchildren. The final straw. That was it? The last straw? The moment I realized I was done with this family business garbage forever. Rage was building up. I was fuming. But nevertheless, I was able to drive home in my piece of junk truck. That decided to create a worrisome rattling noise the entire journey, simply to emphasize the fact that it was on its last legs. Perfect timing. 15 years down the drain, I arrived home. And totally lost it. 15 years. 15 years of dedication, hard work, and sacrifice. 15 years of seeing Matt glide through life on charm and Dad's affection while I developed something worthwhile. Something profitable. Something that was reportedly just turned over, again, to my brother. And now Julie. The only wonderful thing that had happened to me in years was presented to Matt on a silver platter. Complete with an engagement ring and a company truck. I don't think I've ever been so angry in my life. It wasn't even hot or explosive. It was this cold, controlled wrath that suddenly made everything crystal apparent. I was never going to be valued by this family. I was never going to receive what I deserved. I was merely the workhorse, the dependable one they could dump on while Golden Boy received all the glory. The email that changed everything. I grabbed my laptop and checked my email. I looked at the blank compose window for around 10 seconds. Then I started typing. Subject, my resignation. Dad, I am quitting from Taylor & Sons Plumbing, effective immediately. Consider this my 2-week notice, though realistically, you'll be lucky if I make it through the week. I plan to pursue other options. Sincerely, not really, Ryan Taylor. I pushed send before I could back out. Then I sent a separate email to our HR person, who is essentially the bookkeeper who handles payroll, about my accumulated vacation time. I advised them that I would start taking it immediately. I had no intention of returning to the office. The fallout begins. Within minutes, my phone began to blow up. Dad is phoning. Matt texted only WTF, and stupid emoticons. Mom left sobbing voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart, and being overly dramatic. Then Julie called. I let that call go to voicemail. Ryan, it's Julie. Your dad told me you quit. What's going on? Please call me back. As if she didn't know. As if she hadn't been a part of the entire disaster. I disregarded them all. I turned off the phone and began updating my resume. I was finished. I'm done being the family's workhorse. I'm tired of watching Matt get everything he wants while I labor myself to death for scraps of attention. The confrontation dad arrived at my apartment the next morning at 7 a.m. He pounded on the door, as if he were attempting to break it down. What the hell, Ryan? He yelled when I finally opened it, still in my pajamas and unprepared for this showdown. Quitting over email? After everything this family has done for you? I honestly laughed at his face. Done for me? You mean like paying me less than the market wage for 15 years while Matt receives bonuses simply for showing up to work? Or how about offering me a business vehicle as part of my promotion and then giving it to Matt as an engagement present? The excuses? That's different, Dad said, his face flushing. Matt's starting a family. He needs our support. And I don't? I've been supporting this entire family for years. Who do you think keeps the business going while Matt is away enjoying 2-hour lunches and posting on Instagram? Dad's face became even redder. Do not talk about your brother in that way. Matt brings in clients, he is the company's face. And I am what? What about the workhorse? The sucker who actually performs the work while Matt takes all the credit? I am done, Dad. Let Matt manage your business. You don't need me, anyway. The final goodbye. I started to close the door, but Dad's foot got in the way. Classic. You walk away from this company, you walk away from this family, he told me. It was all very dramatic, as if we were watching a horrible television program. I looked him dead in the eyes. If this is how family treats each other, maybe it's for the best, I replied, pushing the door so firmly that Dad had to shift his foot. He pounded and yelled for a bit before giving up and leaving. The aftermath begins. The next day, Matt arrived. I didn't even open the door, but yelled through it that he needed to go before I called the cops. He attempted the "come on, bro, don't be like that" thing, but I wasn't buying it. Mom called repeatedly, crying about how I was breaking your father's heart and tearing the family apart. As if I were the problem here. As if the 15 years of favoritism and disdain were my fault. But, you know what? I've never felt more free in my life. A new beginning. The job search was shockingly easy. That first week, I got 3 interviews, all with larger and more professional organizations than my father's. Both of them made offers. I accepted the position with Wilson Plumbing and Heating, a competitor across town. They're tiny but developing quickly, and the owner, Dave Wilson, values experience and hard effort. Isn't this a novel concept? What is the best part? They offered me a partnership track, in writing. After 2 years, I'll have the chance to buy in and become a part owner. Despite 15 years of service, my father never considered gifting me this. Oh, and they gave me a business truck. A brand new Ford F-350 Super Duty. Better than what Dad took from me. Fully loaded, with the firm logo on the side and everything. During my first week, I made sure to drive past my parents' house. Petty? Yeah. Satisfying? Of course. Watching Taylor & Sons fall apart, meanwhile, the Taylor & Sons enterprise crumbled without me. I've been receiving texts from some of the plumbers, who were truly nice guys, and their stories are better than any revenge fantasy I could have imagined. Week 1. Dad attempts to take over. Dad tried to handle operations on his own while I was gone. He hasn't done the job in 15 years. He had no idea how my scheduling system operated. He ended up scheduling 3 distinct crews on the same day. Then there was no one available for an emergency call at the hospital. That's a large account that I've personally managed for years. They were not pleased. Week 2, Matt gets promoted. Dad delegated responsibility for operations to Matt since he was in over his head. Matthew. He can't even remember to arrange his own dental appointments. Predictably, it was a complete disaster. According to my friend Steve, one of the senior plumbers, Matt arrived late every day. He spent most of his time on the phone with Julie or his friends. Couldn't answer simple job-specific questions. They lost one of our second largest commercial contracts entirely because Matt failed to submit the renewal papers. The account was worth $50,000 each year. Gone. Matt was too busy posting gym selfies or whatever it is he does all day. The dominoes keep falling. The scheduling is so disorganized that they have had to call clients the night before to reschedule. This is infuriating everyone. Their online ratings have plummeted from 4.8 to 3.2 stars in only 3 weeks. Dad is blaming the new system. My system. Not the fools attempting to run it. The office chaos. One of the office employees resigned because Matt continued to blame her for his failures. Accounts receivable are stacking up because no one is invoicing on time. That was another thing I managed that no one seemed to know about. But I didn't expect. Did Dad have to take out a short-term loan to cover payroll? Because their cash flow is all messed up. 3 weeks ago, the business was solidly profitable, is currently struggling to stay afloat. And Julie? Apparently, she stays up late every night to keep things functioning. But she is an office manager, not an operations professional. She can arrange files and answer phones all day, but she knows nothing about schedule plumbing jobs. Managing a group of 15 plumbers. Handling various talents and certifications. She didn't realize what she was getting into with my family. Have you made your bed? Lie in it. The Taylor family breaks apart. Mom has been messaging me nonstop, increasingly desperate messages. Your father's working 16-hour days trying to sort out the schedule. Matt's really trying, but he doesn't understand your system. We had to tell 3 clients we can't get to them this week. Notice that none of these messages contain an actual apology. Or an admission that they messed up. Classic Taylor family. Dad's breaking point. Dad left me only one message, slurring his words as if he had been drinking. This business was okay prior to your sophisticated systems, and it will be fine afterwards. You think you're irreplaceable? No one is. Yes, Dad. Keep reminding yourself of this, while your business rings the drain. Matt's panic mode. Matt's messages have progressed from phony brotherly concern, hey bro, everyone's worried about you. A barely veiled panic. Do you still have the login for the scheduling software? Dad can't find it. To outright desperation. Seriously dude, just tell me how you handled the Henderson specs, Their project manager is freaking out. Julie's half-hearted attempt. Am I the only one who hasn't reached out much? Julie. She sent one email to my personal account about a week after my departure. It was lengthy and full of apologies about how she never meant to hurt me, and how things with Matt just happened. And, of course, she hoped we might remain friends. Finally, almost as an afterthought. If you have time, could you possibly write up how you handled the scheduling? We're having some issues. I removed it without replying. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Oh, and the truck? Apparently, it's creating an odd sound. Matt had the audacity to ask if I could look at it, according to his most recent text message. The truck that should have been mine. The truck was part of my promotion but was given to him as an engagement present. I laughed out and then deleted it without answering. Not my truck, not my problem. A new life at Wilson. Meanwhile, I've been at Wilson for 2 weeks now, and it feels like I've entered a parallel dimension where competence is truly respected. Dave asks for my thoughts on operations. My ideas are executed rather than disregarded. The employees appreciate me for my experience, not because I am the boss's son. Yesterday I fully revamped their service call routing system. Dave was so amazed that he offered me a bonus on the spot. A bonus? For executing my job well. What a concept. And then I met Kate. About a week after starting my new job, I met someone. Kate. She's an architect I met on the job site while we were working on the plumbing for a new office building. Smart. Funny. Director. Not playing any games. Kate is nothing like Julie. Kate is real, whereas Julie was always polished and proper. She comes up to dates wearing jeans and boots. She can talk athletics as readily as she talks design. And calls me out on my nonsense in the most refreshing way. She doesn't engage in games. She doesn't say what I want to hear. Kate delivers exactly what she promises. Our third date. For our third date, we went hiking to a waterfall I'd wanted to see for years. Just two folks that genuinely enjoy each other's company. I showed her some urgent texts from my relatives. She simply shook her head. They had gold and treated it like dirt. Their loss. My gain. Then she kissed me, and I completely forgot about the family business for the rest of the day. Perhaps for months. A chance encounter. This weekend, Kate and I were at the hardware store, purchasing supplies for my bathroom project, when I noticed them. Matt and Julia. Great. Just as I was enjoying a normal Saturday with my girlfriend. Kate clasped my hand when Julie saw us and yelled out. Matt turned around, appearing as if he'd rather be somewhere else. Hey, bro. I kept it brief. Hey. Julie's gaze immediately focused on Kate, then on our linked hands. How have you been? Good. Really good. This is Kate. I introduced them as Julie sized her up. Kate, the absolute champion, grinned and shook their hands. One, nice to meet you both. I've heard a lot about you. Matt's panicked expression. Priceless? The truck problem. Julie inquired about our supplies. Renovating Ryan's bathroom, Kate explained. I'm an architect, handling the design. An architect? That's impressive, Julie exclaimed, suddenly self-conscious. She's an office manager at my family's company, I told her. Why not slightly twist the knife? It turns out they were there because of the truck. You know, the one that kept making strange noises. And of course, Matt had no idea how to fix it. I couldn't resist. The company truck. The one that was supposed to be mine. Matt had the decency to appear embarrassed. Yeah, that one. He had no regrets about what he'd done. Julie's apology. Kind of. Kate, ever the pro, expertly devised an exit route including some fictitious dinner appointments. Julie hesitated as we turned to leave. Can I have a moment alone? Kate questioned me, but I nodded. She gripped my hand before moving away. Julie moaned, appearing tireder than I had ever seen her. The engagement? Taking it slow? Translation, Matt's true colors were showing. The business? Not the same without you. Apparently, they had hired 2 individuals to replace me, but they were still lagging behind. Matt. Different since you left. Yeah, working for the first time in his life will accomplish this. She shifted uneasily and tucked her hair behind her ear. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For coming between you and your brother. I nearly laughed, not in a harsh way, but rather in a wow, you really didn't get it sense. You, Julie, were not the problem. You were simply a symptom of a much larger problem. My family has never valued me. What about the truck? That was just the last straw. She chewed her lip and glanced at Kate. She seems nice. You two look good together. We are, I said without hesitation. She sees me for who I am. Julie nodded as if she understood. But I wasn't convinced she really did. In any case, I was not going to remain around to explain. Mom's final attempt on the way home, my phone rang. Mom. I'm not sure why I answered. She sounded surprised when I picked up, but she recovered fast, jumping right into the guilt trip. They miss me. The business is floundering. Matt is overwhelmed. Sunday dinners aren't complete without me. I let her babble while waiting for the inevitable request. You should come by soon. Maybe we can figure things out. I'm busy every Sunday for the foreseeable future, I told her, maintaining my voice level. Kate smirked as she overheard from the driver's seat. Want me to say I told you so? Or would you prefer to just bask in the schadenfreude? Definitely basking, I replied, smirking. No going back later that night, as we lay twisted on the couch, watching some bizarre true crime documentary, Kate looked at me. Would you ever consider going back to the family business? I didn't even need to think about it. Not even for a second. She grinned, delighted with the response. I'm not sure what will happen with Taylor and Sons Plumbing. Perhaps they can figure it out. Perhaps they will crash and burn. Either way, not my problem. What do I know? Sometimes the best thing you can do is move away from individuals who don't appreciate you. Even if they are family. Especially if they are family. It took me 15 years in a company truck to learn this lesson. Better late than never. My mom sold my stuff and pawned my laptop. I called the cops, had her arrested, and filed a restraining order. Christmas dinner was almost finished when my father put down his fork, looked me directly in the eye, and said, "You are a burden, and you can no longer live with us." At first, I assumed I had misheard him. My mother let out a strange, nervous laugh, as if she wasn't convinced he was serious. But then he simply sat there, staring at me, waiting for a reaction. The room went silent. My younger sister Lily froze with her fork halfway into her mouth. She glanced at me with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. I swallowed the slice of ham I was chewing and set my fork down. What? You heard me, he stated. You've overstayed your welcome. You need to move out. The reality check. I just sat there, trying to process. I was 23. I had a regular career and could have left long ago, but I stayed because they needed me. I paid the energy bill, internet, and groceries most weeks, which they couldn't afford because my father had been unemployed for years and my mother only worked part-time. I was not a burden. I was the reason the lights remained on in that house. And now, out of nowhere, I'm being tossed out like a useless freeloader. Mom has finally spoken up. Maybe we should talk about this later. No, Dad interrupted. This is my house, I make the rules, and I say he's done here. Lily's fear. Lily set down her fork. She was barely 16, and I could tell she was afraid. She looked at our parents as if she didn't recognize them. What did it mean for her that they could throw me out so easily? I took a deep breath. I wasn't about to argue or plead. What if they wanted me out? Fine. But they were not prepared for what that really meant. I slumped back in my chair. All right, I said. Dad sat up straighter, as if he had won an imaginary fight. Mom still looked uneasy, but she said nothing. Perhaps she was in shock. Perhaps she didn't care as much as I imagined she would. I stood up, grabbed my plate, and took it to the sink. I didn't want to give them the reaction they expected. Instead, I gazed at Lily, who remained tight and uncertain. I gave her a slight nod. She was the only one at the table that I still cared about. Dad sipped his drink, as if nothing had happened. Mom returned to picking at her mashed potatoes. Lily continued looking at me, as if she wanted to say something, but didn't. I did not remain to complete dinner. I just walked out. The silent goodbye. That night, I walked directly to my room, closed the door, and began packing. I wasn't going to waste time figuring out why they were doing this. If they wanted me gone, I was gone. However, this meant they would lose all I had paid for. And I wasn't about to warn them. I packed quietly, but I could hear them talking below. Mom's voice sounded low and terrified. Dad's tone sounded forceful, as if he were attempting to persuade her of anything. I caught bits and pieces. He's old enough. We can handle it. He should have moved out years ago. An hour later, Lily knocked at my door. I opened it, and she slipped inside, closing it behind her. She appeared distressed, her eyes red as if she had been sobbing. What the hell was that? She said. I don't know, I replied, tucking my laptop into my bag. But I'm leaving tomorrow. She shakes her head. That's crazy. You pay for everything? They can't even afford food without you. Not my problem anymore. Lily bit her lip, clearly attempting to keep back more tears. Where are you going? I'll figure it out. The fact was that I had some money saved up, but I had not intended on moving out so soon. I'd have to locate a place quickly, perhaps staying at a friend's for a while. But I wasn't concerned. I would be all right. They would not. Lily paused. Can I? She stopped herself. I knew what she'd ask. She wanted to join me. But she was still in high school, and as much as I disliked leaving her behind, I couldn't bring her with me. You know they'd never let that happen, you said. She stared down at the floor. Yeah. I finished packing while she stood there, as if she didn't want to go. Finally, she sighed. You're going to regret this. I grinned. I know. The next morning, I left before they even awoke. I hauled my bags downstairs, loaded my car, and took one last glance around the house. There's no sadness. No regrets. Just relief. Then, as I was driving out of the driveway, I entered my banking app and erased my name off all bills. Electric, internet, water. Even the Netflix account I had paid for each of them. Without me, everything would shut down within a month. I grinned, put my car into drive, and drove away without looking back. For the next few days, I stayed at my friend Jake's apartment while looking for a place of my own. His sofa sucked. His dog, Max, would not stop looking at me while I tried to sleep. His roommate repeatedly asked, "Are you staying forever?" But none of this mattered. Because I was free. No more paying for a house that I didn't want to live in. No longer pretending to appreciate a man who threw me out of Christmas dinner. No more being regarded as a walking ATM. I was finally doing something for myself. 3 days after I left, my phone started ringing. Initially, I ignored it. 7 missed calls from my mother. My father called me twice, which surprised me because he seldom did. Lily sent a handful of SMS. I also ignored those. Until she sent it. They're freaking out, the power's been cut off. I grinned. They honestly believed that the bills would magically pay themselves. Then, another text. Dad's losing his mind. He said you did something to the house. Oh, this was getting better. I could just imagine Dad stomping about in the dark, cursing at my mother while she cried over the Wi-Fi being down. An hour later, my phone called again. This time, I responded. The moment I took up the phone, my mother's voice hit me like a hurricane. Kevin, we don't know what happened. The power's out. The internet's down. The water bill. You didn't pay, I replied simply. Silence. Then, in a hushed voice. You paid for these? I nearly laughed. Are you serious? Who else did you think was paying for them? She paused. Your father said. She interrupted herself. I already knew. My father was too proud to acknowledge he didn't know how things worked. He presumably assured her that everything would be all right. That the house would function flawlessly even without me. Not my problem anymore, I said. Kevin, please, we didn't mean. I hung up. Not my problem anymore. I assumed that was the end of it. They would figure it out. Perhaps my father will finally get off his ass and get a job. Perhaps my mother would work more hours. Perhaps they will sell something to keep the lights on. Either way, it's not my concern. The next morning, I awoke to a message from my bank. Fraud alert. A suspicious login attempt was detected. I sat up fast, my heart racing. I checked my email. 3 additional alerts. Someone had attempted to enter my account. And I already recognized who it was. I quickly logged in and went over my purchases. Nothing had been taken yet. But there it was. An attempt to reset a password. Another failed login. Then a third. I clenched my jaw. My father must have been quite desperate, calling Lily. I phoned Lily, she responded right away. I was just about to call you, she said quietly. Dad's freaking out. He keeps yelling about money. He was on the computer all morning. I breathed sharply. Trying to get into my bank account. She was silent for a second before cursing beneath her breath. Does he have my old passwords? I inquired. Probably, she confessed. You know how Mom used to keep them in that little notebook by the computer. I knew it. My father must have gone through that, figuring I'd be stupid enough to continue using the same passwords from high school. Kevin, Lily whispered. Her voice shook. He's really pissed. I think. She paused. I heard shouts in the background. My father's booming voice, the banging of doors, and my mother crying. I think he's going to do something stupid. Lily's words sent shivers down my spine. What do you mean? What did he say? I inquired, squeezing my phone more tightly. She lowered her voice. He's saying you ruined us. That you did this on purpose to screw him over. He's talking about calling the cops. I nearly laughed. For what? Not paying his bills? I don't know, she hissed. He's losing it. Mom's crying, saying she'll talk to you, but he won't listen. He keeps saying, he's not gonna get away with this. Kevin, I think he wants to go after you. That took the smile off my face. I had expected my father to get desperate. To beg. Perhaps even try to guilt trip me. But to believe he would gain revenge on me? That was a new level of foolishness, locking down everything. Lock your door, I instructed her. If he does something crazy, call me. I hung up and quickly changed all of my passwords. Bank accounts, email, streaming services, even my Amazon login. Then I called my bank to report the hacking attempt. They had locked my account so tightly that I even had difficulty logging in for a few hours. I assumed that was the end of it. I was completely mistaken. That night, Jake and I were hanging out in his apartment, playing some ridiculous Xbox game. Then, bang! Someone slammed the door. Hard. Jake paused the game. Are you expecting someone? I was not. I already got a horrible feeling. I got up, walked to the peephole, and my stomach dropped. It was my father. He was standing in the corridor, hands clenched and breathing like a bull prepared to charge. Jake asked, "Who is it?" I stepped back from the door. My dad. Jake stood up. Dude, what's going on? Bang! Kevin, open the door. I did not move. Bang. This time, it's harder. I know you're in there. You think you can just walk away from this? Jake scowled at me. Dude, should we? Before he finished, my father kicked the door in. Calling 911. That was it. I grabbed my phone and called 911. My dad just showed up at my apartment, I told the dispatcher. He's banging on the door, yelling at me, and he just tried to kick it in. Jake stepped back. Kevin, this is crazy. I met his gaze. Yeah, I know. I held the phone to my ear while my father continued yelling, You ungrateful little. You think you can just walk away? You owe us? You? Sir, officers are on their way. The dispatcher stated. 2 minutes later, I heard sirens. Then my father's voice went silent. A knock at the door. Police, open up. I opened the door just in time to see 2 officers handcuff my father. His face was hot and his chest heaved, but as he noticed me standing there, his expression altered. There were no regrets. There is no humiliation. Just pure hatred. You did this, he muttered as he was dragged away. I simply stood there, unaffected. Because the reality was, he did this to himself. They took my father away that night, but I knew things weren't finished. An hour later, Lily called. Mom's losing it, she explained. She's crying and saying it's all your fault. Yeah, that sounds about right. She keeps saying you have to fix this. She's already calling people, trying to get bail money. I nearly laughed. With what money? Silence. Because we knew they didn't have any. No electricity. There's no internet. No savings. And now there is no father figure to yell at everyone while trying to be in charge. Without me, they were sinking quickly. I should have felt bad. But I only felt relief. Keep an eye on her, I advised Lily. If she does anything crazy, call me. Lily texted me the next morning. Mom's selling your stuff. I froze. Then I called her. She picked up immediately, her voice harsh. I told you to fix this? Are you selling my stuff? A pause. Then, bluntly, we need money, Kevin. I clenched my jaw. So you're stealing from me? You don't live here anymore, she yelled. You left all this behind. It's in our house, that makes it ours. She felt no regret. There is no guilt. It's just entitlement. I'm calling the cops. Don't you dare. I hung up. Then I phoned the cops. 2 hours later, I received a call back. We talked to your mother, the officer stated. She wasn't happy, but she's agreed to hold your things until you can pick them up. I messaged Lily. I'm coming over. But I should have realized they were not prepared, because when I arrived at the house, something made my stomach plummet. My automobile, sitting on the driveway. It should not have been there, I had left it at Jake's flat. I turned off the engine, my heart thumping. My car wasn't simply here. It had been driven. The front seat was folded back, as if someone had sat in it. The glove compartment was open. And, worst of all, the gas tank was nearly empty. I clenched my fist. They'd stolen my car. The confrontation before I could exit, the front door swung open. My mother stepped outside, arms crossed. "You called the cops on me?" she remarked. "You stole my car," I snapped back. She scoffed. "It was just sitting there? You weren't using it." I stared at her, trying to grasp the absurdity of this logic. "It's my car. How did you even get it?" She didn't respond. But I already knew. They had an extra key. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "If you don't give me my key, I'm calling the cops again." Her expression flickered for a second. Then, without speaking, she stormed inside. A minute later, she returned and threw the key at me. It struck my chest and landed on the grass. "There," she spat. "Happy?" I picked it up, trying not to be angry. "I'm taking my things. And then I'm leaving, for good." I walked past her and into the home. Lily waited in the hall, looking nervous. "She took your laptop and pawned it," she said quietly. I closed my eyes. Take a breath in, breathe out. Then I turned to my mother. "Where's my laptop?" She raised her chin. "I told you. We needed money. That was it." I took out my phone, dialed 911 for the second time this week, and let her watch. "Yes, I want to report a stolen vehicle and stolen property," I responded, looking her dead in the eyes. "My mother has just revealed that she pawned my laptop without authorization." Her face lost its color. This time, she was the one who had to deal with the police. My mother worried when she realized I wasn't bluffing. "You can't do this," she muttered, her tone low. "I'm your mother." I ignored her. "Yes, officer. I have proof that she admitted to taking my belongings and pawning them," I stated over the phone. "I want to press charges." Lily stood motionless, her gaze flitting between us. My mother's hands were shaking now. She was absolutely taken aback, as if she believed she could keep pushing and I would never push back. "Kevin," she said again, this time softly, like if she were pleading. "We're struggling. Your father's in jail." I had no choice. "You had a choice," I explained. "You could have worked more. You could have sold your own stuff. You could have asked for help instead of throwing me out like garbage." She blinked rapidly, her face contorted. I was angry. I laughed. "Yeah, so was I." I heard sirens outside. My mother jumped. A few minutes later, 2 officers walked through the door. "Sir, did you call about the stolen property?" one of them inquired. I nodded and pointed to my mother. "She took my laptop and pawned it. I want to press charges." My mother gasped as if I'd stabbed her. "Kevin, don't do this." The officers turned to her. "Ma'am, is this true?" She hesitated, her gaze shifting between me, Lily, and the cops. I could see her calculating, attempting to determine whether she could lie her way out of this. Then Lily spoke. "She told him herself. Just before he called you." My mother snapped her head at Lily so quickly, it was almost frightening. "You little..." "Ma'am." One of the cops interrupted her. "Do you have a receipt from the pawn shop?" Her face fell. She knew what was coming. They took her outside. I looked through the window while they spoke with her for a few minutes. Handcuffs appeared unexpectedly. She was straining, crying, and yelling. Neighbors looked through their blinds. The entire street most likely heard her weeping about how she was simply a struggling mother and how unjust this was. Lily stood beside me, looking out the window. She gulped hard. "Is this really happening?" I nodded. "Yes." And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. The text message. My phone buzzed with a message from an unexpected number. "You're going to regret this." My chest tightened. I read it again. Then I realized, my father had been released on bond. When I saw that message, I knew exactly what had occurred. Someone had bailed my father out, and I had a fairly solid idea who. Probably one of his old drinking cronies, or perhaps a distant family member who hadn't heard the entire story. In any case, he was done and angry. I showed Lily the text. Her face turned pallid. "Kevin, you need to leave." "No," I replied. I turned to face the cops, who were still outside dealing with my mother. "Can I go in and get the rest of my stuff?" One of them nodded. "As long as it's okay with your sister." Lily was already moving. "Let's make this quick." We walked upstairs and packed everything that was mine. Clothes, old video games. Even the silly things I had left behind, thinking I'd come back for them one day. I was not coming back. Ever. As I took the last box to my car, my mother was still crying in the driveway, pleading with the officers to let her go. "This is a misunderstanding. He's my son. He wouldn't do this to me." I just strolled by her, unconcerned. She screamed my name, as if it would suddenly change anything. I got in my car. Lily stood in front of my window, shuffling from foot to foot. "I don't want to stay here." I exhaled. "I know you don't, but you only have 2 years until you're 18. She nodded with watery eyes. "I'll be fine. I'll just be quiet and keep my head down. Call me if anything happens." She nodded again. Then headlights arrived on the roadway. An automobile turned onto our street. My stomach sank. It was my father. He pulled up right as I started the engine. He hardly had time to go before I put it in reverse and backed into the street. He stared at me with hatred in his eyes, as if he were about to approach and try something. I rolled down my window just enough to carry my voice. "You try to come near me again, I'm filing a restraining order." His hands tightened into fists. "You think you're better than us?" I smiled. "I know I am." Then I drove away. It was the last time I saw them. I blocked my parents' phone numbers, changed my financial information, moved, and never looked back. Lily's independence Lily kept out for 2 years, just as she promised. She left as soon as she turned 18. She moved in with a buddy and headed off to college. We're still talking all the time. The consequences? My parents? My father never had a job. My mother lost the house a year later. They bounced around for a while, destroying relationships with family. And the last I heard, they were renting a dilapidated flat in a poor neighborhood. They attempted to reach out to me, Facebook messages, unknown numbers, even letters. I never responded because they had made their pick for Christmas dinner, and I made mine. My wife was cheating with a younger former colleague and was also pregnant with his child. She even admitted that she no longer wanted our kids. My children found a small bunny a few days ago and took it home. They begged us to keep it, but we couldn't maintain a wild rabbit because we already had other pets. The bunny was big enough to fend for itself, so I gently told my kids that it needed to return home to its family. They were sad but decided to return it. However, I was unable to accompany them due to business commitments, so my wife took the rabbit. I instructed her to release it near the thorn bushes at the end of our land, since that was the safest area. We live in a rural region with many predators, and I didn't want the rabbit to be an easy prey. I returned to work, but shortly after, my children ran into the house, weeping loudly. My wife trailed behind them, attempting to calm them down by saying, "It's not so bad." When I asked what happened, my eldest responded, "Mama made us let the bunny go in the middle of the yard, and a hawk took it." They even recounted the unfortunate rabbit's screams. I was ashamed, then enraged. My wife ignored my advice, so our children got to watch the unfortunate rabbit get carried away by a hawk. She defended herself, stating, "It was just a bunny. The kids will get over it." But I told her it was completely incorrect. I had warned her about predators, and now our children had been scarred by what they had witnessed. Both of our children locked themselves in their rooms and refused to speak to their mother for days. When she attempted, they dubbed her the Bunny K. You can guess what the K represents. I've attempted to mediate, but my children are still angry. And honestly, so am I. My wife is upset with me for not having her back. She stated, "As husband and wife, we're supposed to support each other." That resulted in an altercation in which I repeatedly pointed out that she hasn't got my back either. She burst into tears and walked off to our room to pout. Now I'm worried if I messed up. A friend advised me to ask here, so, AITA? Edit 1. Yes, I understand that hawks need to eat, and they may be seen all throughout our area. I just didn't want my kids to see anything like that. They're only 4 and 5 years old. My wife was a city girl, whereas I grew up in the countryside. When I was a youngster, if we had to release a wild animal, we always attempted to find a safe place where it could fight for its survival. Edit 2. I did not yell at my wife. Where in my post does it mention that I yelled? Yes, I chastised her, but I never raised my voice, even when we disagreed afterward. We whispered so that the children would not hear us. Also, I couldn't accompany them to release the bunny because I was working. I work from home part of the week, but I have to keep my phone close by at all times unless I'm on a lunch break. Another thing, I've never used the Bunny K nickname for my wife. That's what our children call her. I've tried to make them stop. I will not call my wife anything derogatory. I'd behave like a bully. Edit 3. We apologize for all of the adjustments, however several individuals misread the situation. My children weren't playing unsupervised when they discovered the bunny. My wife, a stay-at-home mom, was with them when they discovered it. They came running into the house with the rabbit, and I was the one who informed them it had to be released. Edit 4. I can't believe I need to make another edit, but people keep making stupid assumptions. No, this is not a copy of a viral online video. I have not seen the video, but I have no doubt it exists. Hawks frequently hunt small animals. Is it truly shocking that this happened to someone other than the folks who documented a similar situation? In addition, my property is virtually totally flat grassland, with the exception of the home and one tree. I own 4 acres. The lawn was mowed last Sunday, so it was fairly short. That unfortunate rabbit might as well have had a target on its back. Hawks routinely circle our area. I've been battling hawks since I was a child, protecting tiny chicks with my old pellet pistol. Little bunnies are probably one of their favorite things to grab. That is exactly why I instructed my wife to release the bunny into the bushes. Edit 5. I'm so sick and tired of folks saying, "Hawks gotta eat too." Circle of life, or calling me UDA, for allegedly rejecting nature. When I was a kid, I had to keep animals safe from hawks for my grandparents. Farmers also have the right to safeguard their animals against predators. We weren't going to let the hawks swoop in and grab all the newborn chicks they wanted, or as they would have done every day. Yes, I was out there with a pellet gun, but it was mostly a deterrent. I never did shoot one down. Oh, I hit a few, but only barely. All it did was cause them to turn tail and fly away. And for the record, I haven't shot a hawk in 25 years. I have never enjoyed shooting anything alive. My grandfather was the one out there with real guns, taking down hawks and coyotes. But I grew up watching hawks take little creatures. Hawks had little trouble getting food in this location. However, like other predators, they are opportunistic. That is exactly why I instructed my wife to release the bunny into the bushes. But, as I stated in a previous edit, I was unable to leave my desk, a fact that many people still do not seem to understand or did not bother to read. What happened to that poor bunny is nothing compared to what I have to tell you now. I am not sure if this is the appropriate place to post, but I can't think of anywhere else. For those who remember me, I'm the guy whose wife forced our kids to release a wild bunny in the middle of the yard, despite my instructions to move it to the bushes for safety. A hawk swooped in and took the bunny directly in front of our 2 young children, who were 4 and 5 years old at the time. They freaked out at their mother and ran back to me in tears. After that, our children began calling her the bunny slaughterer. After her affair was revealed, others began calling her by that moniker, making it seem even more fitting. What happened to the unfortunate bunny? That's ancient history compared to what I have to say now. I'm chatting to you as a free man after completing my divorce a few months ago. This will be long and confusing, so buckle up. Edit, AP stands for affair partner. I apologize for not making that apparent sooner. I showed my wife the original Reddit post, and she was outraged. So upset, in fact, that it sparked a major fight, and then she gave me the silent treatment for a week. Following the rabbit incident, I tried to get my kids to stop mistreating their mother by disciplining them with little groundings and timeouts. But the term came back every time our kids were furious with her. After a few weeks, my wife finally gave up the cold shoulder and said she should have listened to me regarding the bunny. She stated she should have carried it to the bushes, as I had recommended. But she later stated she just defended herself because she didn't want to be wrong. I accepted her apology and even apologized for creating the Reddit post. I wanted to go to marriage counseling, but she refused. She acted as if nothing was amiss with our marriage, and I chose not to press the subject further because things appeared to be improving. But after a few weeks, my eldest approached me and said she needed to tell me something. She was angry with her mother for another reason. And she was afraid to tell me. What she said shocked me to the core. I consoled her and said she could tell me anything. Well, what she said stunned me and altered everything in an instant. She explained that Mama had been bringing a man over on Saturdays while I was at work for months. She called him her special friend. She bribed our children to stay quiet about it, but my eldest sensed something was wrong and worked up the confidence to tell me. Children understand stuff. They pick up on things rapidly. I absolutely despise it when people ignore that reality. I'd observed my wife acting differently recently. She had been short with everyone, particularly the children. I tried to talk to her about it after showing her my first Reddit post, but she exploded over anything she could think of. She criticized my beauty, behavior, habits, and even my family. She also said that I used to smoke, although I quit more than 10 years ago. She then resorted to locking me out of our bedroom and crying so loudly that the entire house could hear it. So when my eldest approached me and dropped that bombshell, I quickly put 2 and 2 together. She was cheating, and her conduct mirrored the mood swings she had while pregnant with both of our children. Similar but worse. According to what I've read online and what friends and even a counselor have told me, my wife was cranky due to hormones and projecting as a result of her adultery. I'm not an expert in psychology, but it makes sense. I wanted to believe it was simply a misunderstanding, but my instinct warned me otherwise. So I did what I needed to do. I swiftly ordered and installed covert cameras, without informing anyone. To keep it a mystery, I had them brought to my employment, so no one at home would notice. I set them up on a night when my wife went out for a girls' night. It was simpler than I expected. Within a few hours, I had them all connected to Wi-Fi and could monitor the entire house from my home PC, laptop, and work computer. At first, I was concerned that I was overreacting. I thought, if I'm wrong, I'll just take them down, and no one will ever know. But no. My worst concerns were confirmed. I gathered a lot of evidence in just the first week. My wife's affair partner, AP, was a former colleague. I remembered him quite well. They were always pleasant at business gatherings, but I never thought much of it. My wife left her work years ago to be a full-time mother after becoming pregnant with our first kid. It was a joint choice at the moment. She maintained contact with her old coworkers, claiming they were her greatest friends, but not anymore. What I'm about to tell you has made her disliked by everyone. Her AP was over a decade younger than her. When she quit her employment, she mentored him to take over her position. They'd stayed quite close. My wife and I are both over 40, although you wouldn't know it by looking at her. She's gorgeous. She is constantly mistaken for someone in her 20s. And I suppose she took full advantage of that. I finally confided in my sister about what was happening. I showed her the nanny cam clip. She informed me she had a long-held suspicion. She had seen my wife at a neighborhood bar, going way too close to a man who wasn't me. They never kissed, but there was plenty of touching. Hand on the shoulder, lower back. She didn't tell me sooner because she wasn't certain. That is all I needed to hear. I purchased a GPS tracker and placed it in my wife's trunk. My sister and her husband promised to help me. They followed my wife's location during her next girls' night out. She did not go to her customary area. Instead, she traveled 20 miles further, to an entirely different location. There, she met AP. My sister and brother-in-law watched from their car. They recorded as AP continued to stroke my wife's belly while they talked. When I viewed the clip, I knew. She was pregnant with his child. Her mood swings. The secret, everything made sense. I lost it. My sister and brother-in-law had to calm me down since I was extremely distraught. I wanted to bury my sorrows with drink, but my sister persuaded me out of it. She was correct. Drinking was the absolute worst thing I could do. I took a leave of absence from work, but told my wife it was for a business trip. She could not have been more thrilled. She didn't even try to hide her happiness. Who was this woman? She was not the woman I married nearly 2 decades ago. Did someone else take her place? Is she an alien from the pod people? Did I ever really know her? The more I thought about it, the less it made sense. So I quit attempting to make sense of it. Before I left, I ensured that my cameras were rolling. My sister and brother-in-law agreed to take my children for a few days. My wife took the bait. She phoned AP only a few hours after I departed. He showed up that evening, and stayed the night. I'm not going to go into detail about what they did. You can complete the blanks yourself. But what struck me the hardest? They kept joking about me the entire time. They openly discussed their kid and how they wanted to figure out what to do before her tummy began to show, since she was already more than 3 months along at the time. There was no way it could be mistaken for mine. AP is a different race than me, so it would be evident from birth that the kid wasn't mine. My wife dismissed AP's concerns, saying they had months to straighten things out. Then she shamelessly claimed that this wasn't even her first affair, having slept with another man when she was 29 years old. She told AP that she was weary of having to be the good housewife, tired of being around a dull man like me who made her feel old, and that if it hadn't been for my financial security, she would have left me long ago. Even AP inquired about her plans for our children. Her precise words were, "He can have them." She didn't want to be around them any longer because she thought they liked me better, and she'd be having her do-over kid anyhow. I almost flung my laptop across my motel room because I was disgusted. But I controlled myself, drank a few beers from a 6-pack, ate at a diner, and then watched a movie. After that, I spent half the night lying in bed, contemplating, until finally falling asleep. I thought I knew my wife rather well. I loved her. I would have given her everything. But, in the end, some individuals are simply nasty, and you'll never truly know who they are until they expose their actual nature. I made up my mind right then and there. I was going to destroy her through divorce. I am typically a polite and quiet man, But if you push me too far, I may become your worst nightmare. The following day, I went straight to a law company and requested the meanest divorce lawyer they had. I reside in an at-fault state, so once I caught her affair on camera, she was doomed. At first, the lawyer was hesitant that I would hire him so rapidly, but when I told him more about my position and showed him some video footage, he gave me a mischievous grin. We shook hands, and he promised to start right immediately. This was the type of case that divorce lawyers like working on. A few weeks later, when I was working from home and the kids were in school, my wife was served with divorce papers. The sheriff delivered them right into her hands, and my cameras captured it all. She appeared horrified as she opened the envelope, read the contents, and suddenly lost her mind. She stormed into my office, yelling at me, but I remained cool and composed the entire time. I had already checked out of our marriage. She tried to argue, but I simply told her that I had made up my mind and wanted her out of my house. I was the only one who had ever paid into the mortgage. She screamed at me, "You can't do this to me," and even threatened to tell people that I had battered her if I brought her to court. She even threatened to have me fired from my job. I told her to go right ahead. She could make up whatever falsehood she chose. It would not save her. It wasn't like she hadn't already planned to screw me over. She was pregnant with AP's child after all. Her eyes widened. "How much do you know?" she inquired. I simply stared at her and said, "Enough." Then I told her again, I wanted her to leave. She resisted, yelling that the house was as much hers as mine. Then she returned to her bedroom and shut herself within. I watched the bedroom cameras as she had a total tantrum. She then took out her phone and contacted the cops. She was acting panicked, yet she was smiling the entire time. She was quite an actress. If I hadn't previously realized she was a liar, I would have believed her performance over the phone in an instant. I waited for the cops with the front door wide open, welcoming them inside when they arrived. They came in hot and ready for a fight. However, the house was clean. There were no traces of a fight. Then my wife ran out of the bedroom, grabbed one of the officers' vests, and began crying, accusing me of being a monster. I asked one of the officers if I could show them evidence of what was going on, and he said okay. My wife was surprised. She had no idea I had recorded everything. I took out my laptop and showed the officer video footage from my security cameras. First, I aired a video of my wife claiming she would make stuff up to ruin my life. Then I showed them the video of her running from my office into the master bedroom. Finally, I aired a clip from the bedroom camera in which she called the cops and flatly lied. I had captured everything, from different perspectives. Despite her assertion that I hit her, she had no visible injuries. And the cameras throughout the house revealed a very different story than the one she told the cops. I then handed the officers a thumb drive, telling them it held all of the footage they needed to establish she had phoned them under false pretenses. Despite all of this proof, my wife continued to lie. She argued that I was an abuser, even claiming that the recordings were unlawful and inadmissible. I quickly explained that these were entirely legal. They were security cameras within my own home, not in a public place. She turned to the officers and urged them to take action. And they did. She was the one handcuffed. She immediately began crying like a child. I just sat there and shook my head. This was once the woman I adored for many years. I felt she was a wonderful, intelligent, and endearing individual. I could not have been more wrong. As the cops led her away, she cried that they couldn't do this to her. But she didn't fight back because she knew fighting arrest would just increase her charges. Once she was gone, I canceled all of her credit cards, which were in my name. I also canceled all future payments to our joint bank account. She'd have to use her own money to get herself out of jail. And she had a lot saved up. For years, she had worked while I paid the mortgage. She was far from broke. The next day, she returned for her automobile. But I'd already packed several suitcases full of her clothes and personal belongings and left the key on the seat. She couldn't even walk back into the house. Her parents came to speak with me. Her parents approached me the day after she had bailed herself out. They initially only knew the warped version of events she had told them, the same lies she had told the police. Her father was very furious. Despite his age, he was huge and strong, and he appeared ready to assault me. However, I asked him a simple question. Did you know your daughter was having an affair? Did you know she's pregnant? He froze. His shocked expression provided me with an excellent opportunity to explain myself. I got out my laptop again and showed them the recordings. When they realized the reality, they were disgusted. They said they couldn't believe she was their daughter. They apologized and offered to keep in touch to help with my children. Then, right in front of me, they contacted my wife on loudspeaker to confront her with her lies. She initially tried to defend herself, until they informed her that they were standing right next to me and had seen the tapes for themselves. They knew everything? And they wanted her out of their house right away. She tried to backtrack, but they weren't having it. Her parents said to her, "We did not raise you to be a selfish, adulterous liar who would try to frame her own husband." Then they stated something that surprised me. "You are no longer our daughter." They abruptly disowned her over the phone. They ended the call before my wife could say anything else. She called them back several times, but they always ignored her. When my in-laws returned home, not only was my wife gone, but she had destroyed various items in their home. My mother-in-law was in tears due to the devastation. I still consider my ex-in-laws to be family because they see their grandchildren on occasion, but my ex-wife is basically dead to us. A few days later, my wife returned with AP in tow to gather her belongings. AP would not even enter the house, and my wife would not speak to me while she gathered the rest of her possessions. She was aware that cameras were everywhere, and that attempting anything would just lead to a deeper hole. I wasn't alone either. My sister and brother-in-law were present to keep an eye on her. My brother-in-law made sure to keep an eye on AP from the window, just in case. While my wife was still packing, the kids arrived home. She made no attempt to speak to them, even when our youngest cried for her. Before departing, she ripped our wedding photos from the walls and hurled them on the floor, breaking the glass. I believe she desired a reaction from me because she gazed at me while doing so. But I didn't say anything. Seeing that I would not satisfy her, she collected the last of her bags and walked out the door. After she went, I had to contact my elderly mother to remain with me for a bit. I couldn't care for my kids on my own, and I didn't have much childcare help. Furthermore, I couldn't take too much time off work. At the same time, I scheduled DNA tests for my children. I was confident they were mine, but several others cautioned me to be certain. Fortunately, both of my kids are mine. I also was tested for STIs, and happily, I was negative. About a week later, my wife arrived at my door again. She stated she'd agree to a clean divorce if I would too. That meant she'd receive half of everything. If she thought I was stupid enough to consent to it, she was mistaken. I declined in front of her. There was some back and forth, and she basically admitted that she had researched the laws and discovered that they were not on her side. We had met, become engaged, married, and spent our entire lives in this state. There was no way she could escape a significant loss unless I agreed to settle. I refused. I said to her, "You betrayed me, our kids, your parents, and practically everyone by having an affair." Then I slammed the door on her face. She departed softly. I did not see her again until court. Several months later, we were in divorce court. By then, my wife was clearly pregnant, but AP was nowhere to be found. I completely anticipated her lying to the judge, which she did several times. But I had sufficient video proof to disprove any lie she told. She did not stand a chance. When she realized her falsehoods wouldn't work, she tried a fresh strategy: postponing the divorce. She refused to participate, imposed unreasonable conditions, and dragged everything out. She wanted most of my savings, a lengthy list of my own assets. I would buy out her half of the house, despite the fact that she had never paid into it. On my end, I was pushing for full custody of our children and the removal of her name from the house deed. I had clear video evidence that proved she stopped caring for our children. She was eager to fabricate lies to ruin me. She kept procrastinating and changing demands, but the court wouldn't have it. This is an at-fault state, therefore she was entitled to very little, especially as an adultery. And the fact that she attempted to frame me exacerbated her situation. In the end, she lost custody of our children and walked away with only her things, a fair financial settlement considering the circumstances, and the automobile I had previously purchased for her. The title was in my name, but I signed it over without hesitation as part of the settlement. She had made no attempts to communicate with our children throughout the divorce, so I received full custody. The house is now wholly mine, and I am totally free of her. My now ex-wife attempted to continue lying about me to others prior to and after the divorce, but my sister ensured that word spread about my wife's infidelity. Once our mutual friends understood who was telling the truth, they quickly cut her off. She and her AP left town together once their divorce was finalized. I heard that AP was not fired, but rather transferred. To where? I do not know. Honestly, I don't care. They could have sent him and my ex to freeze in Greenland for all I cared. I'm just glad they're both gone. By now, my ex should have had her do-over baby, and I hope it was all worthwhile for her. This is not the type of story I expected to publish on Reddit. I started out by talking about my wife releasing a bunny where a hawk could catch it. However, Many of the responses I received back then reminded me that I should have paid attention to the red signals far sooner. I believe I just wore rose-tinted glasses throughout our marriage. But it's over now. Thank you to any readers who made it through this. I understand it was a lot to read, but this is my life. I had my ex's name removed from the house deed because every bank document proved that I was the only person who had ever paid into it. My ex was also constantly arguing with the judge, and in an at-fault state, being a confirmed cheater puts you in a lot of difficulties during a divorce. It's similar to having a signed prenup against you. And when I said I hired the meanest lawyer in the firm, I meant it. The man resembled a bear and a shark mixed together. My ex-wife received a $60,000 settlement, as well as the car I bought for her 2 years earlier for $50,000. I had totally paid off the car and handed the title to her. She was also offered partial custody of our children, but after the court saw the video of her claiming she didn't care about them anymore, she didn't bother fighting for custody. Instead, she gladly gave up all parental rights when she saw she wasn't going to get her way. And if you think the cops wouldn't have arrested her for lying, think again. The cops here don't mess around. My ex attempted to paint me as a wife beater with a psychotic smirk on her face. That is plenty of justification for an arrest. My wife, learning I was infertile, grew distant and eventually left for another man. Her family and friends reached out, but I refused to help. It's common to hear statements like, "I never saw it coming." That's exactly how it was for me. Though I had been married to my wife for 4 years, I honestly thought we were doing well. For the most part, I thought we were in accord. We had a life plan in place. The difficulty is that I felt we both wanted children. We started serious discussions about it as soon as we got married. She would continuously emphasize her wish for 2 or 3 children, droning on about the names we would give them, nursery decor, and other details. She would even spend hours online planning our future children's lives, browsing baby goods and clothing. It kept us linked and provided a topic for discussion. We were excited to begin this new chapter in our lives together, and everything seemed to be going as planned. But then we got some horrible news, which devastated me. After a few months of attempting to conceive, we went to the doctor to figure out what was happening. To shorten a long story short, it was me. The doctor essentially told us that our chances of naturally becoming parents were slim because my count was far too low. It felt like a stomach punch. I felt unworthy. Our entire set of plans went in an instant. The news hit me hard, incredibly hard. I found myself in a bad situation for a while. I was a total catastrophe at first, but therapy eventually helped. At first, she appeared to be quite supportive, saying that it didn't matter and that she would be okay with just the 2 of us. However, there was something off about the way she said it from the outset. She appeared to have dropped it way too quickly. She was all about creating a family 1 minute and then suddenly said she didn't need children to be happy. I understand that people's opinions evolve, but her entire behavior struck me as weird. She had stopped talking about children since she was preoccupied with baby names. Furthermore, it appeared that she began to perceive me in a different light. She would suddenly start making tiny barbs at me, something she had never said before. She would make comments about how I wasn't taking care of myself, how I should exercise, or how I should be more productive at home. Yes, I could have gained a few pounds, but it appeared like she was always looking for reasons to accuse me of something. When I asked her about the dramatic change in attitude, she dismissed it. She said that I was very sensitive and was just imagining things. But I knew there was something wrong. She was not like the woman I married, who would sit with me for hours discussing our future plans. She wasn't particularly harsh, but she had a frigid demeanor about her, as if she had already checked out mentally and was only acting. I think as time passed, I grew to trust her when she assured me that everything was fine. I didn't want to come across as needy or insecure, so I stopped pursuing the topic. In any event, after a few years, we were barely getting by. We had fallen into a practice of rarely discussing anything serious. We seemed like housemates rather than husband and wife. She would consistently ignore my attempts to discuss alternative options, such as adoption or surrogacy, by declaring that she did not want to consider them. I never believed her when she said, "As long as we're together, I'm happy." She seemed more interested in convincing herself than convincing me. She suddenly informed me that she wanted to go on a girls' trip. It wasn't unusual for her to travel with her buddies. She had done it several times previously, and I had always supported her. She had long expressed a desire to visit to America with her friends while we were living in Brighton. We had built trust over the years, so I didn't give it much attention. I ensured she had everything she needed, helped her pack, and took her to the airport. I remember her final remarks before she left. She looked at me and said, "Thank you for being so supportive." I found it unusual that she would say that when I hadn't done anything particularly spectacular. but she appeared so earnest that I discounted it as a simple expression of gratitude. That night, I stayed up to ensure everything ran perfectly. I called her when she came, kept myself busy about the house, watched TV, kept track of the time, and waited for her to text me to let me know she had arrived. Her flight was supposed to take about 9 hours, so I wasn't too concerned at first. When I realized her flight had landed, I contacted her to check in. The phone continued ringing but no one answered. I didn't give it much attention. I figured she was fatigued and had gone straight to her hotel to rest. However, as AM dawned and I still hadn't heard from her, a gnawing worry crept in. I assumed she was merely busy or her phone was on quiet, so I tried calling again and texted her a few times. After a few more hours of radio silence, I was completely freaked. Finally, I called her sister to see if she'd heard from her. Nothing. I was starting to panic. In the hopes that something had gone wrong with her phone or that she just hadn't had time to check in, I even called her purported travel companions. However, they were equally bewildered as I was. When I contacted, they said they hadn't joined her on the vacation. They were actually sitting in a cafe just 2 streets away from our house, drinking their morning coffee. That's when it really hit me. She was not traveling with any other girls. She had no friends with her. She hadn't traveled with anyone. She had simply disappeared. My stomach felt like it had fallen through the floor as I sat there holding the phone. I couldn't understand it. Why would she tell me that lie? Why didn't she tell me before leaving? I tried to tell myself that it was a mistake, perhaps she had missed a connecting flight or was delayed due to an emergency. But, deep inside, I knew the truth. She had planned it. Her stating, "Thank you for being so supportive," and the entire story of a girl's trip were all part of whatever plan she had in mind. I was at a loss for what to do. It seemed like I was locked in a nightmare, unable to awaken. I'd never married a woman like her. I didn't even recognize the person. The coldness, the fact that she had stopped discussing our future, and the subtle jabs at my appearance and health, all of this immediately made sense. I just hadn't noticed. Perhaps I didn't want to see that she'd been drifting away for a time. I just sat there that night, staring at my phone, waiting for a call, a text, anything. However, nothing happened, and I knew it wouldn't. I remember lying there staring at the ceiling, and when I awoke the next morning, I assumed it was all a bad dream. However, when I noticed that her side of the bed was vacant, reality hit in. She had actually left. After packed her bag, she vanished. The promises I had made to myself the previous evening, maybe she was late, maybe her phone died, were no longer legitimate. She had plainly planned it. She wanted to leave. I was in utter denial for the first few days. I kept contacting her phone, wanting to hear her voice and get an explanation. I even left messages, hoping she'd respond. I struggled to find words half of the time, but I kept trying. However, all I got in return was quiet. Strangely, the silence made matters worse. It was as if I'd always been a stranger to her, left alone to figure out what had gone wrong. Her family was originally as astonished as I was. They had not heard from her, and her mother had no idea of her plans. In the end, I visited her family more times than I could count, desperate to meet with her mother and gain some answers. They must have felt bad for me. When I couldn't bring myself to cook, her mother would make dinners for me. She occasionally allowed me to stay at their home. She'd sit with me as I talked about all the little things that didn't make sense, trying to figure out why my life had suddenly become so complicated. To be honest, there were times when I felt too numb to talk. I would simply sit there in solitude. I alternated between wrath, sorrow and guilt. What went wrong? I kept asking myself. Was there a sign that I missed? Wasn't I paying enough attention to her? On certain days, I would go over all of our disputes and chats, attempting to figure out what had caused her to leave. I kept thinking about what I should have done better to save our marriage. It may sound dramatic, but I was possessed by the desire to find it out. I clung to the hope that obtaining the answer would somehow improve everything. I barely slept. I barely ate. My productivity began to decrease. People began to notice. When people inquired about my well-being, I would dismiss it as I was preoccupied with personal concerns. Admitting the truth, that my wife had abandoned me without saying anything, was too embarrassing. I eventually confided in a few close pals. They did their utmost to divert me by taking me out and pushing me to move on. But even when I was among them, my thoughts kept going to her. Where was she? Why wasn't I enough for her to stay? One of the most difficult parts was the constant inquiry from others, neighbors, relatives, acquaintances, and even former coworkers who had learned I was married. Each time someone inquired, "How's married life treating you?" Or, "How's your wife?" It was like peeling off a new scab. I'd simply grin and fib, assuring them everything was all right. But each time I said that lie, it felt heavier. Finally, treatment proved to be the only thing that helped. I'd never gone before, but after months of barely functioning, I realized I couldn't do it alone. I needed to speak with someone who was neutral and did not carry the weight of our common experience. I contacted a therapist and began attending weekly sessions. It helped. I talked constantly about her fury, betrayal, and the hole she had left behind. I talked about the sleepless nights, about lying awake and replaying every scene over and over. The therapist let me realize something I had not been able to accept. If she really wanted to stay, she would have. It was not my fault, she decided to depart. That was a difficult pill to swallow. For a long time, I believed myself that I was flawed and had somehow turned her away. However, I eventually came to see things differently. I chose to ignore her long-standing coldness and isolation, believing that things would improve on their own. I had convinced myself that if I just kept my cool and put in enough effort, I could save our marriage by myself. The revelation that I couldn't, that nothing was ever enough, hurt. As time passed, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. It wasn't until she left that I realized how much I'd lost in our marriage. I had always tried my hardest to make her happy and to keep our home life comfortable. But now, with so much free time, I'm at a loss for what to do. So I began revisiting old pastimes that I had long forgotten. I tried making fresh meals. I went to the gymnasium. I started reading novels that I'd been putting off for years. Finally, my work improved. At first, I was just going through the motions, barely keeping up. However, when I began to feel more like myself, I increased my effort at work. It was one of the few things I still felt in control of, and it gave me a sense of success. I'd always been brilliant at what I did, but now I threw myself entirely into it. The extra hours, the focus, they paid off. I got a promotion. Something I would not have accomplished if I had spent all of my time drowning in my sadness. Nevertheless, there were difficult days. A picture, an old movie ticket stub, or another minor memory would abruptly transport me back to the past. I'd find myself wondering if she ever thought about me or regretted what she'd done. But as time passed, those instances got fewer and farther apart. Each time, it grew little easier to let go. I also reconnected with people I had lost touch with after getting married. We went trekking. We went to the golf range. I began doing activities that I hadn't done in years. Having friends by my side, people who weren't caught up in the turmoil and could support me without dragging me back into the pain, was a huge comfort. Looking back, I realized I had invested too much of myself in that connection. As her husband, I had lost a huge part of me. When she departed, it felt as if she had stolen a piece of me with her. However, I was gradually rediscovering myself. It was not quick, it was not easy. But I was making progress. At the end of that year, when I looked in the mirror, I saw more than simply a man whose wife had abandoned him. I'd rebuilt. I had survived. I was stronger now. For the first time in years, I felt free to live my life without her shadow lurking over me. And I took pride in it. I genuinely thought I'd moved on from everything. After all of the commotion, things had begun to feel normal again, or as normal as it could be. Work was progressing smoothly. My friends kept me busy. I had a routine down. Even my thoughts of her had disappeared. Sure, there were occasional flashbacks, odd recollections that appeared unexpectedly, but they weren't as often as previously, when everything I did seemed to be linked to her. She was the last person I expected to see standing outside my door on Saturday morning. But there she was. She holds a baby in her arms. I got chilled. It was like witnessing a ghost. For a little while, my brain ceased to operate. She appeared nearly identical, perhaps a touch worn down, but otherwise unchanged. And the way she looked at me, as if she truly believed I would be delighted to see her, moved me. I thought I had stopped caring. But meeting her again resurfaced emotions I had long suppressed. For a minute, I stood there in silence, staring. She smiled as if nothing had happened and asked, "May I come in?" A nerve. After everything she has done, she simply walks up here, expecting me to welcome her back with open arms. However, I kept my cool and told her, "No. You can stay right there." I said that I did not want her in my home, bringing all of the chaos back into the place I had established for myself. Despite her bewildered demeanor, she remained where she was and simply began her story. She began by saying, "I know this may come as a shock, but I wanted to come back and explain everything." Her look was hopeful, as if she genuinely felt I would be eager to listen. I was tempted to simply close the door in her face. Perhaps even laugh. But I was too curious. I was curious about the reason for her disappearance and the tale she had come up with. She went on to say that she had made a mistake in leaving and had now recognized that she had lost the best thing that had ever occurred to her. Not my words, but hers. She claimed that after much thought, and after having this child, she had finally realized what was truly essential in life. After years of ignoring me, it appeared that what was most important had unexpectedly brought her back to my doorstep. "This is our second chance," she said, looking down at the newborn. What I was hearing was incredible. Our second chance? As if this child were some sort of miraculous reset button, allowing us to resume where we left off. I was outraged on the inside, but my expression remained neutral. She went on to suggest that, despite having made a terrible mistake, we could now start over, just the three of us. She wanted us to be a family again. "Why did you leave?" That was the question that had haunted me since she first appeared. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I wasn't sure how long I could do it. Now that she was present, I needed to hear the truth. For years, I tortured myself with unlimited possibilities, attempting to make sense of everything. She hesitated, looking down at her feet, as if embarrassed. Then she finally said it. Or, at least, what she said was true. She stated that she had gone because she wanted a child, and she had found someone who could provide one, because I could not. She spoke nonchalantly, as if it were insignificant, as if she hadn't ruined my life, as if I should simply nod, accept, and go on. She went on to explain that, while the man she had left me for did not remain, she had already given birth and had realized she wanted me back. How convenient. I paused to digest what she was saying. She was standing here, confessing that she had abandoned me, fled with another guy, had his child, and now expected me to simply accept it. To pretend that none of this had ever occurred. "So, you left. Found someone else. Had his baby? And now you think you can just come back and pretend like nothing happened?" I responded with curiosity. She burst into tears and apologized repeatedly, acknowledging she had made a tremendous mistake. I remained unaffected. She kept talking, attempting to persuade me that she knew she was meant to be with me. That I was the person she actually loved. To be honest, it was difficult to maintain a straight face. She sounded deluded. The desperation was written all over her face. It wasn't love that brought her back. It was terror. Then she attempted to guilt-trip me. She went on and on about how tough it had been for her as a single mother, as if she were the victim in this whole situation. As if her own decisions had not brought her here. She assured me that this time, she was prepared to make it work. She said she needed my help. All I could think was, who does she think I am? I let her continue. I stood there listening. Then I'd had enough. "You made your choice a long time ago," I informed her. "And now you have to live with it. There's no second chance here." She appeared shocked. As if she had never considered the possibility that I may say no. As if she actually believed she could simply walk back into my life whenever it suited her. Then she felt enraged. Just when I thought she'd finally get it and leave, she lashed out, accusing me of being selfish. She demanded that I give her another chance and let her repair things. She even had the nerve to say, "I could have taken half of everything and divorced you back then if I wanted to." And then she said it. The house should still be hers. At that point, I felt a burst of relief. Her disguise had finally slipped. Finally, I was seeing her actual self. I did not argue. I did not yell. I simply looked her in the eye and replied, "We're done. You wanted a different life, and now you have it. This is no longer my responsibility," I simply stated, staring at her. Then I closed the door in her face, interrupting her mid-sentence. I was not interested in hearing what else she had to say. As I stood there, listening to her muffled screaming from the other side of the door, I felt strangely calm. She had the ability to shout, cry, and knock at will. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never allow her back in. The woman I had once loved and married no longer existed. In her place stood a stranger, a self-centered, entitled stranger who believed she could pick up the pieces whenever it suited her. I stepped away from the door and sat down, feeling lighter than I have in years. I assumed that was the end of it. I figured she would eventually understand and walk away. But no. Instead, she began hammering on the door, screaming various things. Her bravery is admirable. She had the guts to stand up and insist that I listen to her. Here. At my door. The one spot I fought to recapture after she abandoned me. At first, I pondered ignoring her and letting her scream until she got exhausted. But then curiosity got the better of me. I was curious what kind of excuses she would come up with this time. So I opened the door. Just enough to let her know I was listening. Not enough to allow her in. She appeared stunned. As if she'd just been smacked. As if she expected me to react differently. As if we were simply having a usual dispute rather than coping with the implications of her abandonment. Then she began into a long monologue. She expressed her willingness to forgive me for closing the door on her. About her desire to start over. She went on and on about how, if we both worked hard, we could get things fixed. And that's when I lost it. I laughed. Not simply a chuckle. A full, sincere and unrestrained laugh. Because this woman possessed more nerve than I had ever seen. When I did, she snapped. She was enraged. As if I had harmed her. As if I were the one who should feel guilty. You left, I informed her, my tone even. You had your chance, and you threw it all away. I'm not just going to pretend none of that happened because you feel like it. Her face turned crimson. Then she started talking about how lost she had felt after leaving. She discovered her mistake too late. You don't understand how hard it was for me, she told me. I didn't believe any of it. No, I replied. You made the decision to leave. You planned it, you lied about it, and then, you went through with it. Now, I scoffed. Now your regret means nothing. And that's when she finally gave up the act. Her entire demeanor changed. The gloomy, remorseful woman was gone. In her place was the bitter, greedy individual she had always been. She attacked me. She accused me of being harsh and not having the grace to give her another chance. Then she said it. If I'd wanted to, I could have taken everything from you back then. I could have taken half of everything you own. She genuinely stated that. I just stood there, staring at her in bewilderment. This woman, who had abandoned me without saying anything, now claimed she was deserved something for not screwing me over even more. As if she deserved recognition for not being as bad as she could have been. So, what? Am I supposed to be grateful? I requested an explanation. Grateful that you only ditched me and didn't take my stuff too. Her expression shifted between wrath, desperation, and remorse. But I didn't care anymore. That was it. That was the point at which all of the years I had spent questioning myself, wondering if I had done something wrong, vanished. For the first time in years, I saw her as she truly was. I felt free. But she wasn't done. She began pacing my porch, shouting about how I'd regret not giving her another chance. I'd never find somebody like her again. She even tried to make it appear as if I was the one losing, as if she were the prize. It was surreal. This was the same woman who had demolished everything we'd constructed. Yet there she was, acting as if I should be asking her to stay. When she realized I wasn't going to cave, she grew louder. She began ranting about how I forced her to leave in the first place. She claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had been more accepting of the entire kid scenario. Her rationale was perplexing. She was actually implying that I had failed her as a husband because I was unable to conceive. As if this validated her decision to have a child with someone else. The mental gymnastics were incredible. To be honest, I was stunned that she was attempting to blame me for her actions. I glanced at her and commented, "Look, if you wanted a kid that badly, you could have just told me the truth. You didn't have to lie to my face and pretend everything was fine while planning your escape." She gave no response. She simply gazed at me, as if I had hit her. But I did not let her talk. "You made that decision entirely on your own," I continued. "And now you have to live with it. That's not my problem." She made one last attempt. Her face returned to that depressed expression, and she pleaded with me to think about the boy. She said I was being unjust by ignoring him. She tried to make me feel guilty by holding the youngster in her arms. As if I were the villain in this scenario. But I was not buying into it. "I don't know that child," I informed her firmly. "I have nothing to do with him. He's not mine. And neither are you." That was it. I noticed it in her eyes. For the first time, she understood. She understood that I would never change my opinion. I would never allow her back into my life. The wrath in her expression dissipated, to be replaced by something else, perhaps regret. Or maybe she was just frustrated because her manipulation wasn't working. I didn't care. She had expected me to fold, forgive, and accept her back. But she was nothing to me now. She waited there for a few more seconds, as if waiting for me to reconsider my decision. I didn't utter another word. And as it dawned on her that I meant every word, I stood there, observing her. Then I closed the door. This time, I did not wait for her to knock again. This time, I knew in my heart that I'd already made up my mind. There was no turning back. I'm not sure why, but I felt like I had finally won. It ended as I moved away from the door. She'd spent a lot of time attempting to manipulate her way back into my life. But I had freedom. There would be no second chances for either her or us. She was now merely a memory, something I had finally put behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt as like I could breathe again. After so many years of pain and guilt, I felt at peace. And you know what? It was pleasurable. When I closed the door behind her, I felt a strange sensation of calm sweep over me. I no longer felt sad. I was not furious. I wasn't even astonished anymore. It was as if all the years of effort I had put into her had vanished, along with the pain, guilt, and never-ending wondering. I was prepared to go on. Because I had finally received the closure I had never known I needed. This time, it was really over. However, life never ends smoothly. A few days later, I received a text from her mother. She apologized. She expressed her embarrassment at how her daughter had handled everything. She had tried to reason with her, but it was evident that it had not worked. Her mother was a kind woman. She had been kind to me when her daughter departed, and I could tell she was genuinely upset about the situation. I didn't have anything against her. However, I did not want to be dragged back into any of it. So I just answered, "Thanks for checking in," and left it at that. I wasn't going to waste time justifying my decisions, and I wasn't going to give her mother any additional information. She knew it was over because she understood. Over the next few weeks, I discovered bits and pieces via social media and mutual relationships. She had allegedly moved back in with her parents, and things were not going well. The child's father, the man she had left me for, was not involved at all. He had bailed. She was left to figure things out on her own, as he had apparently not committed to the long term. Few people wanted to help her. She'd burned almost every bridge. Her previous acquaintances, many of whom had backed me when she initially went missing, had little sympathy for her. They were not about to get drawn back into her drama. They'd all moved on. And frankly, you can't blame them. Even her parents weren't pleased. They did not have the financial resources to maintain her and the child. I knew this because, immediately after her mother texted me, her father called. Curiosity got the best of me. I almost didn't respond. He was clear yet respectful. He added that they were hurting financially and quietly suggested that I might be able to assist them. He spoke about the youngster and how terrible things were for them. "We know you cared about her once," the man added. I listened politely, but the irony of the situation made me laugh within. Then he went on and on about how his daughter only needed a little support to get back on her feet. That's when I joined in. "Your daughter made her choices," I said, my voice calm but forceful. "I am neither in a position, nor in the right frame of mind, to help her." He didn't press the subject. I believe he received the message. Then, out of nowhere, individuals I hadn't communicated with in years, her old friends, began to reach out. Some attempted to use guilt, telling me that she was struggling and that I should find it in my heart to give her another chance. One even had the guts to suggest, "The child requires a father figure. Do not let resentment prevent you from doing the right thing." I refused to back down. I refused to let anyone make me feel guilty about my decision. I'd already given the woman everything I had. Years of self-doubt, trying to be enough, and she'd thrown it all away. Instead of expecting me to save her, she had to accept responsibility for her own actions. The calls and mails gradually slowed and eventually stopped completely. It seems that everyone had finally understood I was serious. That I'd moved on. That I wouldn't get pulled back in. And that's when I really felt at ease. For the first time in years, my life seemed normal. I had friends. My job. My routines. I'd recreated my life on my own terms. It wasn't lavish or glamorous, but it was mine. Ironically, I found myself rediscovering joy in the small things. Things I had overlooked when I was married. I began reading novels that I had planned to read for years. I cooked my own meals. I took long walks. And for the first time, I felt liberated. I didn't need anybody's approval. I wasn't always concerned about someone else's happiness. For once, I arrived first. Every now and then, I would come across someone who knew us both. They'd say, "Hey, whatever happened to her?" I would respond briefly, politely, and change the subject. I didn't need to revisit that part of my life. It wasn't like I was hiding anything. I had previously perfected the capacity to abandon her. The last I heard, things were still not going well for her. She was jumping between her parents' house and sleeping on friends' couches. She couldn't keep a consistent job. Occasionally, someone I barely communicated with would message me, saying she needed aid from anyone who would listen. Some even suggested that she was still hoping I would reconsider. That maybe one day, I'd alter my mind and play father to her child. But that wasn't going to happen. I'd worked too hard to reconstruct my life. She'd made her bed. And I wasn't going to be the one picking up the pieces. Nothing could bring me back into that chapter. I was finished. In the end, I believe I found the closure I needed. She was now facing the repercussions of her own actions. And me? For the first time since she departed, I felt entirely and really free. I'd finally let go of the weight she had left behind. And you know what? I was pleased. Not in a big dramatic way. Just content, and it was enough. My wife became distant and obsessed with her career. I discovered her affair when I found evidence of her planning a future with another man. 48 hours later, she had nothing, and the electrician she underestimated had the power cut, and now she is begging. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now, let's start the video. What's up, Reddit? Never thought I'd be one of those guys posting their relationship drama online, but here we are. I'm going to lay out the whole show that's been my life these past few months. Buckle up. I'm Alex, 34, male. I've been an electrician since I was 19. Started as an apprentice, made money, worked my way up to journeyman, then master electrician. 5 years ago, I started my own business. Nothing fancy. Just me and 2 other guys wiring up houses and doing commercial jobs around town. I make decent money now, enough to be comfortable without being rich. Me and Jessica, 31, female, met at my buddy Dave's housewarming party 6 years ago. She was his girlfriend's friend from college. Not going to lie, the first thing I noticed was her hourglass body, but what actually got me hooked was how she laughed at my dumb jokes, like genuinely laughing. Not that fake polite giggle most chicks do when they're just being nice. We hit it off right away. She was working at this marketing firm downtown, handling social media accounts for local businesses. She was smart as hell, always had something interesting to say, not like those boring dates where you're desperately trying to keep the conversation going. Our first date was at this dive bar that has the best wings in town. She showed up in jeans and a t-shirt. I knew right then I was in trouble. 3 years of dating, 3 years married. We built what I thought was a pretty decent life together. I was busting my ass getting my electrical business going, sometimes working 14-hour days, crawling through attics in the middle of summer or wiring new constructions in the freezing cold. But it was worth it. We bought a modest 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Well, mostly mine since I put down most of the down payment, but whatever. In the beginning, Jessica seemed to genuinely appreciate what I did. She'd have dinner ready when I got home from a long job, and listen to me about the general contractor who nearly got himself electrocuted because he couldn't wait for me to kill the power. She'd brag to her friends about how her man could fix anything, and used to wear my old work shirts to bed because they smelled like me. Never complained about my calloused hands or the fact that some days, I came home so tired I'd fall asleep on the couch before dinner. Weekends were simple but good. We'd work on house projects together. She actually got pretty decent with a paintbrush and could hold her own with basic power tools. We'd have friends over for BBQs, binge watch shows, try new restaurants, normal couple stuff. Took a vacation once a year. Nothing extravagant, usually a beach somewhere within driving distance, but we had fun. But I'm going to be real. There were probably signs that things weren't as perfect as I thought. When you're grinding every day trying to build something, you don't always see what's right in front of your face. Honestly, I've never been the most observant guy when it comes to emotional stuff. My dad was old school, fix things, provide, protect. Talking about feelings wasn't exactly part of the training manual. Things were good for the first couple of years of marriage. We talked about kids but agreed to wait until my business was more stable and she got to a better position at her company. We had a decent little savings building up, I was landing bigger contracts, she got a promotion, everything was on track. Her family liked me well enough. Her dad appreciated that I worked with my hands and built something from nothing. Her mom was always a bit snooty, typical suburban Karen who thought her daughter would have landed a doctor or lawyer, but I won her over by fixing everything in their house whenever we visited. Nothing builds goodwill with the in-laws like solving the plumbing problem that's been driving them nuts for months. My family loved her. My mom was just happy I found a girl who could put up with me. My dad thought she was a little too into social media and brand names, but he kept that to himself mostly. My younger brother thought she was hot, the little shit, but respected our relationship. We had a good group of friends too, a mix of my construction buddies and her marketing co-workers. Regular game nights, summer cookouts, fantasy football league that got way too competitive. Normal. A good life. If you'd asked me then, I would have said we were solid, not perfect. We had the normal fights about dumb stuff like dishes in the sink or me tracking mud into the house. She'd get annoyed when I'd forget some event with her friends. I'd get irritated when she'd spend too much money on clothes or makeup. But nothing major. No red flags, at least, none that I saw. Man, typing all this out, it's like watching the beginning of a horror movie where everything seems fine, but you know the serial killer is about to jump out. Except in my case, the monster was wearing Victoria's Secret and sleeping next to me every night. The first sign something was changing was probably about 8 months ago. That's when Jessica started talking more and more about this new guy at work. Mike. Mike with his MBA from some fancy school. Mike with his amazing ideas for the company. Mike who was going places? Should have paid more attention when my wife couldn't go 5 minutes without mentioning another dude's name. But like I said, I was focused on growing my business, landing contracts, managing my small crew. Didn't realize I should have been focusing on what was happening right under my own roof. But then it became Mike this, Mike that. Mike thinks we should approach the Johnson account differently. Mike went to Cancun last year and said we should go. Mike says my ideas have real potential. Pretty soon, I'm hearing about Mike's breakfast choices and workout routine, like I give a shit that Mike does CrossFit and eats avocado toast. Around this time, Jessica started coming home late from work. It started with team happy hours that were supposedly mandatory for team building once a week. Then it became twice, then 3 times a week. She'd roll in at 8 or 9 p.m., slightly buzzed, smelling like a mix of bar and perfume. When I'd ask about her day, she'd get this distant look, like she was mentally somewhere else. She started making these little comments about how her college friends were doing so much with their lives. One just bought a vacation home in Colorado, another got promoted to VP at some tech company, always with this weird undertone, like somehow our life wasn't measuring up. Mike says I have real management potential. He thinks I should be aiming higher, she'd say, scrolling through Instagram while I tried to tell her about landing a big contract for a new office building downtown. Like my success meant nothing because I wasn't wearing a suit to work. Then came the appearance changes. She started dressing differently for work, clothes I'd never seen before, more makeup, a new hairstyle, new perfume that probably cost more than my work boots. She started going to get her nails done every week instead of every few months for special occasions. The gym was next. Suddenly, my wife, who used to groan about walking the dog around the block, was hitting the gym at 6 a.m., before work at some fancy new place downtown with classes, smoothies, and personal trainers. $200 a month compared to the perfectly good $30 a month place 5 minutes from our house. She was coming home later and later, always showering at the gym after her workout, so she'd arrive home freshly showered, makeup perfect, hair done, at 8 or 9 p.m. Because that's totally normal after a sweaty gym session, right? I'm not the jealous type. I've never been the guy who checks his girl's phone or tracks her location. I always figured trust is either there or it isn't, and if it isn't, the relationship is already over. But I'm also not stupid. I started noticing she was always on her phone but would turn the screen away when I came near. I caught her texting late at night with the brightness turned all the way down. She would take calls and suddenly need to step outside for better reception, at our house, which has never had reception problems. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the toilet, and she wasn't in bed. I found her in the kitchen, furiously texting someone. When she saw me, she nearly dropped her phone and quickly said she couldn't sleep and was checking work emails at 2 a.m. Sure. Money changes too. We always had separate accounts for our own spending money, plus a joint account for bills and savings. I started noticing larger than normal withdrawals from the joint account into her personal account. When I asked, she'd say something vague about needing to help her sister or investing in a work thing. Credit card statements showed charges at restaurants on nights she was supposedly at girls' night or working late. Expensive clothing stores when she claimed she was just browsing. Hotel bar charges in the middle of a work day. The final straw was Valentine's Day. I'm not usually big on that commercial holiday, but I made reservations at this nice steakhouse she'd been wanting to try. Ordered flowers to be delivered to her office. Even bought her this silver bracelet she'd been hinting about. I texted her around noon to make sure she'd be home in time for our 7 p.m. reservation, no response. I called at 5 a.m., straight to voicemail. By 6:30, still nothing. I ended up sitting on the couch in nice clothes with flowers wilting on the table and a cold bracelet box in my pocket. She finally strolled in at 11 p.m., clearly drunk, saying there was a work crisis and her phone died. She didn't even notice the flowers or my dress clothes, just went straight to bed. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. When I brought it up, she got defensive, saying I was overreacting and making her feel guilty about having to work late. That's when I knew for sure something was up. The Jessica I married would have at least felt bad about missing Valentine's Day, would have apologized, tried to make it up to me. This new Jessica just seemed annoyed that I expected her time and attention at all. I'm a pretty straightforward guy. My first instinct was to just confront her, ask if she was cheating, and have it out. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe self-preservation. Instead, I decided to pay attention. Really pay attention. I started keeping track of patterns. Every Tuesday and Thursday, late meetings. Every other Saturday, girls' brunch that somehow lasted until dinner. Always came home with her hair done but no shopping bags from these supposed shopping trips. I checked our cell phone records online, multiple calls and texts to the same number, always at times when she was working late or at the gym. A number that wasn't saved in our family phone plan contact list. One day, while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. It was locked with a new passcode. Since when did she need to lock her phone from me? We used to know each other's passcodes, not because we were checking on each other, but just for convenience. Then the work events started. Company parties, client dinners, team outings, that I was suddenly not invited to. It's just for employees, or it would be boring for you. The Jessica I married used to love showing me off to her coworkers, introducing me as her sexy electrician husband. I'm not the most observant guy with relationship stuff, but even I couldn't ignore what was happening. My wife was pulling away, building a separate life that I wasn't part of. The question was, what was I going to do about it? As I was deciding what to do, the universe decided to hand me a piece of real evidence. I was fixing our leaky bathroom sink when I dropped my wrench, and it knocked over Jessica's makeup bag that was sitting on the counter. While picking up the scattered lipsticks and whatnot, I found a hotel keycard tucked in the side pocket, not from any vacation we'd been on. This one was from the Marriott downtown, walking distance from her office. Weird thing to keep as a souvenir unless it had some special meaning, right? I put it back exactly where I found it and finished fixing the sink like nothing happened, but that keycard kept eating at me. That night, after she fell asleep, I did a deep dive into our finances. Jessica always handled the bills and budgeting, not because I couldn't do it, but she was pickier about that stuff, and I was happy to let her deal with it. I logged into our joint accounts and started going through recent statements. Found large withdrawals to her personal account over the last 3 months. We're talking about $500 here, $700 there, money that was supposed to be for our future, our savings, our life together. Credit card statements showed shopping charges at stores way above our usual budget. Dinner charges on nights she told me she was eating with the girls at restaurants that were definitely not the casual places her friends usually picked. Charges at high-end lingerie stores for stuff I'd never seen her wear. Then I spotted it. A hotel charge from the same Marriott downtown from 3 weeks earlier. Just a bar charge, not a room, but still, she hadn't mentioned being at any hotel bar. When I cross-referenced with our text messages from the day, she told me she was working late on a big presentation. My buddy Trent works in IT security. We've been friends since high school. I'm not proud of it, but I called him up and asked if he could help me access Jessica's email. I told him my suspicions. He was hesitant at first, but he'd been through a bad divorce himself after his ex cheated, so he understood where I was coming from. He helped me set up a simple keylogger on our home computer. Just a basic program that would capture her passwords the next time she logged in. Shady? Absolutely. Legal? Probably not. But at that point, I didn't care. I needed to know what the hell was going on. 2 days later, I had her email password. There it was. Message after message with this Mike guy. Weekend plans, complaints about me, how I was stuck in my underdog mindset while Mike was going places, how she was settling by staying with me, how she deserved more luxury in her life than I could provide. The same Mike who I now knew was her direct supervisor, who had just gotten promoted to regional director at her company. The same Mike who, according to his Facebook profile, that I now stalked like a psycho, was married with a 2-year-old and another kid on the way. There were hotel confirmations, screenshots of apartment listings they were looking at together, messages planning their future after she left me, all while she was sleeping next to me every night, eating the dinners I cooked, and living in the house my work paid for. One email from Mike read, "Just a few more months, and my bonus comes through. Then we can both leave our dead-end situations and start fresh. Just be patient and keep things normal at home." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. 6 years together, 4 years of marriage, all a lie, or at least it had become one. I sat in my truck for an hour that night, parked outside our house, just thinking. Rage, betrayal, everything washing over me. Part of me wanted to storm in, pack her stuff, and throw it on the lawn. Part of me wanted to find this Mike and introduce his face to the pavement. Part of me wanted to just get drunk and set something on fire. But I didn't do any of that. I'm not that guy. Never been the type to lose control, even when every part of me wanted to. My dad always said, when you're angry, that's exactly when you need to think clearest. Old man was right about that at least. Instead, I started making plans. If Jessica and Mike were plotting their exit strategy, I needed to be 2 steps ahead. I wasn't going to be the chump left holding the bag when they decided to pull the trigger on their little escape plan. First, I set up a consultation with a divorce lawyer, a guy I'll call Richard, who my buddy used when his wife cheated. Supposedly a real shark. I forwarded all the emails I'd found, the financial records, everything. He confirmed what I already suspected. I had more than enough for an at-fault divorce on the grounds of adultery. But Richard suggested something smarter than just confronting her outright. If you show your hand now, she'll just get defensive and start hiding assets, he said. Better to be strategic about this. Gather more concrete evidence, photos or video, if possible, to document any unusual spending or asset transfers to secure your own finances before making any moves. And most importantly, act normal while doing all of this. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. Once you confront her, the game changes completely. A game, that's what my marriage had become. A game of chess where I needed to anticipate her moves and counter them before she even made them. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. I almost electrocuted myself because I was distracted, thinking about Jessica and Mike planning their new life together while I was busting my ass providing for us. My apprentice, Tommy, actually had to step in and remind me to test the circuit. Kid saved me from a nasty shock. Embarrassing. That night, when Jessica came home late as usual, I forced myself to act normal. I asked about her day, listened to her lies about a stressful client meeting, and even managed to kiss her goodnight without throwing up in my mouth. While she slept, I started making lists on my phone. Assets to protect, accounts to separate, people who needed to know what was happening, and people who didn't. A timeline for how this would all go down. The next morning, I texted her that I might have to go out of town for a big electrical job, a commercial building in Phoenix that needed a complete rewiring. I'd probably be gone for about 2 weeks. I asked if she'd be okay holding down the fort alone. Her response was so enthusiastic it was almost comical. That's great, babe. Such a good opportunity for you. I'll be fine here. Don't worry about me. I bet you will be, I thought. I bet you will be. The trap was set. Now I just needed to put the rest of my plan in motion. I made a big show of packing, loading my truck with tools, kissing her goodbye. I even stopped by my parents' place on the way out so they'd think I was really leaving. Told them not to mention anything to Jessica if they talked to her. I said I wanted to surprise her with a gift from the money I'd make. Mom thought that was sweet, if she only knew. Once I was clear, I circled back to town and crashed at my buddy Tony's empty rental property about 15 minutes from my house. He's been through his own divorce nightmare, so he got it. I needed eyes on my house, so one of my friends, Kevin, who installs security systems, hooked me up with some discreet outdoor cameras I could monitor from my phone. We set them up when Jessica was at work, one watching the driveway, another on the front door. Nothing inside the house. I'm not that kind of creep, and honestly, didn't want to see what might happen in my own bedroom. The first day was quiet. Jessica came home, ordered food, watched Netflix, sent me some miss you texts that I answered with equally fake enthusiasm. Second day, around 7 p.m., a black Audi pulled up. Out steps Mr. Regional Director himself. Tall, gym body, expensive watch. Catching the streetlight, I could see he brought wine. They stayed until 3 a.m. I got it all on video, the arrival, the way they kissed at the door. Definitely not their first time. How comfortable he looked walking into my house with an overnight bag like he owned the place. Same happened 3 more times that week. Once they left together in the morning, she called in sick while they spent the day, who knows where. They ate dinner on my deck, drank my expensive whiskey I'd been saving. They even took my boat out that I busted my ass to buy. While watching this show, I wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I called my dad first, showed him everything. He was pissed but focused. "What's the plan, son?" he asked. "Need to protect what I've built," I told him. The next few days were a blur of preparation. With Richard, my lawyer, we secured my business since it was already an LLC in my name only. I set up new bank accounts, transferred my work equipment to the business name, changed beneficiaries on everything, and stored important documents and irreplaceable stuff off-site. Most importantly, I had papers drawn up giving my dad temporary power of attorney over my business and moved half our savings to my new account, leaving her exactly half, everything above board and documented through my lawyer. By day 10, I had everything I needed: videos, emails, financial records, and a solid legal strategy. Just one more chess move before confrontation. I anonymously sent all the evidence to Mike's pregnant wife. She deserved to know before making life-altering decisions, just like I wished someone had done for me. With that final piece in place, I was ready to head home a day early from my business trip and watch Jessica's face when she saw me. So, I drove home a day early from my Phoenix job, ready for the big confrontation. I had this whole speech prepared in my head, kind of expecting to catch Jessica and Mike in the act, maybe get some more video evidence. But life's full of surprises, ain't it? I pulled into the driveway and noticed something off right away. Her car wasn't there. Weird, since my security cam showed it parked there just 3 hours earlier. Figured maybe she went grocery shopping or something. I walked in, and the house felt empty. You know that feeling when a place that should feel like home suddenly doesn't? The air was different, quieter. I called out her name, nothing. I checked the kitchen, the living room, then headed to our bedroom. And that's when it hit me. Her side of the closet was completely cleared out. Dresser drawers empty. Bathroom counter missing all her expensive creams and makeup. On the bed was a note, folded neatly on my pillow like this was some romantic movie. Alex, I can't do this anymore. I've moved on with someone who matches my ambitions and can give me the life I deserve. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce. Don't try to find me, Jessica. Cold, right? 6 years together, 4 years of marriage, and that's it. 8 lines on a piece of paper, not even a full page. I sat on the edge of the bed, note in hand, feeling nothing. No rage, no heartbreak. Just this weird emptiness, like I was looking at the aftermath of something that had been dead for months, but I just hadn't admitted it yet. I headed to the living room and opened my laptop, pulled up the security footage from earlier that day. There it was. Jessica and Mike loading suitcases and boxes into his Audi around noon. She was laughing as he struggled with a heavy bag, both of them looking excited, like kids sneaking out past curfew. I spent the next few hours making lists: bank accounts, credit cards, passwords, utilities, all the practical stuff that needs handling when your wife decides to vanish. I changed the locks, changed every password she might know, and called Richard, my divorce lawyer buddy, to get the ball rolling. While checking our accounts, I noticed something interesting. She'd cleared out her personal checking account but hadn't touched our joint savings. Either she forgot in her rush to start her fancy new life, or she was planning to come back for it once things settled. Then it hit me, the safe in my home office. I opened it, and yep, all her important documents were still there: birth certificate, passport, social security card, everything you need to function as an adult in this country. She'd been in such a hurry to bail that she'd completely forgotten the basics. Stupid. I picked up my phone to text her about it but stopped. Richard's advice came back to me. Don't engage. Don't engage until we have everything in order. Let her make the first mistakes. Instead, I called my dad, explained the situation. He came over quickly. We sat on the deck talking while I transferred half our savings to a new account in my name only, leaving her half in the joint account. I'm not a thief, but I'm not a sucker either. Dad stayed over that night. Good thing too, because around 3 a.m., my phone started blowing up, text after text from Jessica. Just realized I left some important things. Can we arrange a time for me to pick them up? Alex, please respond. This is childish. They're my documents. I need my passport for a new job opportunity. I shut off my phone and went back to sleep. Let her sit with her poor planning for a while. The next day was weirdly normal. I went to work, wired a new construction site, made small talk with my crew. Nobody knew my life had just imploded, and I didn't feel like sharing. I checked my phone at lunch, 27 missed calls, voicemails ranging from sugary sweet to threatening legal action. Mike had even called twice, trying to sound all authoritative about personal property law. I just texted Jessica once. All communication through lawyers from now on. Then I blocked both their numbers and finished my sandwich. 48 hours after Jessica's great escape, I was in the garage reorganizing my tools. What can I say? It's therapeutic. When I heard someone pounding on the front door, I checked my new security app, and there she was, looking considerably less put together than when she left. I laughed my ass off and took my sweet time answering. Found her on the porch, mascara smeared, hair a mess, wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes. You changed the locks? First words out of her mouth, all indignant, like I'd done something wrong. Yep. Didn't invite her in. Just stood in the doorway. I need my things, Alex. My documents. I can't do anything without them. Should have thought about that before you cleared out while I was working. Her face did this thing where she was trying to look sad, but also trying to look attractive while looking sad. It's a weird expression that used to work on me. Not anymore. Can I please come in and get my passport at least? I have a job interview tomorrow. Nope, all items will be exchanged through lawyers. I've already contacted mine. That's when she switched tactics. She started crying, shoulders shaking, the works. Please, I made a mistake. Mike isn't, things aren't what I thought. I just need my documents. Not my problem. You can't legally keep my identification documents. Her voice rising to that shrill tone. Actually, I can. I'll secure them until proper legal exchanges are arranged. They're safe. They'll be returned through appropriate channels. She tried to push past me into the house. I just stepped to the side, blocking the door with my arm. Jessica, you made your choice. You left. This isn't your home anymore. It's my house too. My name is on the mortgage. Might want to check that again. The mortgage is in my name only. The house was purchased with my pre-marriage savings as the down payment, and since you abandoned the residence without notice, you've complicated your claim considerably. Thank you, Richard, for that legal script. Although I felt she didn't quite get what I said, she felt it, because her face showed the exact moment she realized I wasn't the pushover she thought. Where am I supposed to go? Mike's place is complicated. Trouble in paradise already? That was fast. She glared at me. His wife found out somehow, and showed up at his apartment screaming. Had all these emails and videos? Did you have something to do with that? I just shrugged. Sounds like karma to me. I have nowhere to go, Alex. Let me stay here until I figure things out. Just for a few days. I'll sleep on the couch. No. You're being cruel. Full waterworks now. After everything we've been through, it would be leaving someone with a note after 4 years of marriage. Cruel would be screwing your boss in our bed while I was working my ass off providing for us. Cruel would be planning to clean out our accounts once his bonus came through. Her eyes went wide. How did you? I know everything, Jessica. Every email, every plan, every complaint about my lack of, While you were falling for his lease car and maxed out credit cards, she crumpled onto the porch steps, sobbing for real this time, not for me, but for her perfect exit strategy falling apart. I almost felt bad. Almost. I'll have Richard contact your lawyer about document exchange. You should go now. I closed the door, watched through the security cam as she sat there crying for another 20 minutes before finally calling her sister to pick her up. Later that night, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You had no right to ruin everything. I forwarded it to Richard with one comment. More evidence for the file. I spent the next couple of weeks focusing on work and getting my life together. Had a massive rewiring job for a restaurant downtown that kept me busy. Plus, Richard was putting together our divorce strategy. And yeah, it's been 3 weeks since she showed up crying on the porch. The document exchange finally happened, supervised by both our lawyers at Richard's office. Jessica showed up looking rough. Dark circles under her eyes, wearing clothes I recognized from 2 seasons ago. Guess the fancy shopping sprees were over? She tried to corner me before the meeting. We need to talk privately, Alex. Nothing to say that can't be said in front of the lawyers. Richard was a beast. Had everything organized, documented, ready for signature. Jessica's lawyer looked annoyed the whole time, probably because she kept interrupting him to make emotional appeals directly to me. I made a horrible mistake, she said at one point, reaching for my hand across the table. We could work through this. I moved my hand away. We're here to exchange documents, not reconcile. Her lawyer finally had to tell her to stop because she was making things worse. That seemed to wake her up to the reality of the situation. As we were wrapping up, I found out through Richard that Mike's situation had imploded spectacularly. His pregnant wife, Emma, had filed for divorce with evidence of multiple affairs, not just with Jessica. The company fired both Mike and Jessica for violating policy about manager-employee relationships. He was facing possible legal action from the company for using business trips to conduct his affairs. Jessica had been staying with her sister but wore out her welcome after a week of crying and drama. I also heard that she tried moving in with Mike, but that lasted all of 3 days before reality set in. 2 unemployed people with mounting legal bills in his expensive apartment that turns out he could barely afford when he was employed. Meanwhile, my life's been improving. The business is doing better than ever. Landed 2 major commercial contracts that will keep us busy all year. Bought a new truck, not to show off, but because I actually needed one for work. The divorce is moving quickly. Since Jessica left voluntarily, leaving a written note about moving on with someone else, and there's solid evidence of her affair, it's pretty straightforward. Richard thinks we'll be done in record time. Jessica still tries reaching out occasionally, texts from new numbers about how she misses what we had and made the biggest mistake of her life. I don't respond. Nothing left to say. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents in Ohio. And I'm pretty sure that Mike's sleeping on his brother's couch and working at DoorDash to make child support payments. Their grand romance lasted less than a month. In the real world, some of my friends ask if I regret how I handled everything. If I was too harsh or calculated. I tell them the same thing. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when they're planning to screw you over, there's no shame in protecting what you've built. My old man told me something that stuck. In electrical work, you always plan for the worst case scenario because it only takes one mistake to kill you. Turns out that applies to marriages too. Life's not perfect now, but it's real. And it's mine. Met that chick at the job site the other day. Been grabbing coffee after work a couple of times a week, and I'm already developing feelings for her. Nothing serious yet, but there's something about a woman who can thread a pipe and talk circuit breakers that just works for me. She laughs at my dumb jokes. Lisa thought she's the only woman on earth who laughs at my jokes, and she doesn't look at her phone every 5 seconds when we're together. Crazy how you don't realize what you're missing until you actually have it. No regrets. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, Reddit. You guys helped more than you know. Edit. Holy thanks for the gold. To answer the most common question, no, I won't take Jessica back. Not even if she changes some wires. Once crossed, can't be fixed.